again. Got the green light, and we should be live. And it should be the same title. And is everybody in the chat? Can you still hear me? Let me see. Has anything fixed itself? Is it a new hangout? Is it the same hangout? Because sometimes OBS will just pick up where it left off. It looks like I was gone long enough that it killed it. So let me go over my channel and check. See if there's a new one.
I just checked. It looks like the audio's finally working.
All right. So let me go over my channel and check. All right. Audio sounds good. A new one. Cool. Audio is good. Thank you,
So
Cult Bear.
Was it an actual cable that was fucked up? Or?
No. Well, all I really did was I closed OBS completely and restarted it, and then I hung up completely with Hangouts and restarted a fresh call. And I didn't even bother to unplug my headset. I just left it where it was. So it might have been because I was literally wiping ashes. I'm a smoker, so I was wiping ashes off the table, and I accidentally pulled the cable, and my headset came unplugged from my computer, and I had to plug it back in. That might have been part of the problem. I don't know, but whatever. As long as we're good, we're good. Cool, Adelaide, Bob, everybody. Everybody says we sound good. All right, cool. All right, so you want to go ahead and give Gandalf the link and let him come in? And then,
yeah.
All right. So we'll get back to where we were in just a second. We were into some interesting conversation where it's going to be some contentious disagreement points about huge topics like the axioms of how we define God and the nature of the universe and the nature of existence. And so these are some contentious points that Jen and I are trying to hammer out. And ought to be a decent conversation.
Awesome. Welcome back, Gandalf.
Sorry about that.
Cool. All right. So Gandalf and Jen. Welcome, Gandalf and Jen. And so to get this conversation going, Jen, would you like to remind us all where we were and the reason we decided to go ahead and go live and the whole topic that we're going to be covering?
There was a shit stream yesterday that started out kind of okay, but got derailed because there were some people on there that I didn't really get the vibe were particularly serious, and I think at the end of the day, there was just too many people. So we were talking about a lot of different things, and the subject of God came up, and it wasn't a productive conversation because, well, I think the reason is because we didn't take time to agree on axioms, and a lot of these people were axiomatically asserting that God is undefinable. So when you assert a negative as an axiom, you're precluding the possibility of actually getting any answers, because you can just come in and say, well, it's undefinable at any stage of the reasoning process. So that's why I don't start with the God axiom. I just start with the causality axiom, and God pops out of there sort of spontaneously.
So when you say you start with the causality axiom, I'm a pronounced determinist. So I completely adhere to the causality axiom. When you say causality as an axiom, what exactly do you mean by that? And let me just refine my question before you answer. I don't know if you're familiar with William Lane Craig and the Kalam cosmological argument, which is an apologetic for theism. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am
terrible.
Okay. So, all right. So, based on that, what is your axiom for causality?
It's basically saying two things. Okay, and the first one is that effects are in the future of causes. So, underlying that axiom is another axiom that is, I think, pretty indisputable, and that's essentially that time is unilateral, right? Time goes from the present to the future, not the other way around.
As far as we know. Yep.
Well,
As
again,
far as we know, we can accept that.
this is axiomatic. So the way it works with axioms is you assert the best ones that you can, and if you find evidence that contradicts your axioms or renders your axioms inconsistent, you have to change your axioms. So
Yep.
to this
Yep.
point, we don't have any evidence that effects can be in the past of causes, right? So first you have the cause, then you have the effect. And that's one part of causality. The other part of causality is that causes and effects are different. So to assert that a cause is equal to its effect would be contradictory. And so those are the two attributes of causality, basically unilateral time and a distinction between causes and effects.
Okay, we're on board.
So that's really the only axiom that I use. Now, another sort of pseudo axiom, I don't really know if you need to make it an axiom or it just sort of ends up functioning like an axiom. And it's actually the disproof of this quote unquote cosmological argument. And just to recap it for the audience, if they're not familiar with it, it's basically the position that if you regress up the causality chain far enough, you get a problem of infinite recursion, right? Like what caused this, some cause, and then what caused that, some other
Well,
cause.
frame if you don't mind, I will or you can, but we for the audience, and I understand not everybody's familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument, which is an apologetic for religion or the existence of God. Many people are not familiar with that particular argument, so would you like to frame it, or shall I?
Well, I was in the process of doing that.
Well,
So,
there's a very simple framework, and if you would like to elaborate, then you can. So what I'll do is I'll just give the simple version, and you can elaborate. The Kalam cosmological argument it's very simple. It's two or three premises and then a conclusion. And premise one is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise two is that the universe exists, therefore it has a cause. And premise three is see, this is where I might actually screw this up. I think that there might be another premise, but ultimately it says that the universe exists, therefore the universe had a cause, and then here's where atheists and the apologists have a big problem. Apologists will leap forward and they'll say, well, that cause was God. And they make no justification for the existence of God. It's just start with premise one. Everything that exists has a cause. The universe exists, therefore the universe had a cause. And the conclusion, therefore God. So this is the divide: is the second or final premise, and the conclusion is where atheists want to step in and say, no, 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 you guys are leaping forward. You're making assertions and conclusions that are false, and they don't follow their non sequiturs.
well, the atheist solution to this problem thus far is the Big Bang. That's the supreme cause. But that also has its roots in Kabbalah, so it's not really a non-religious argument in the true sense, right?
Well,
So
okay. You and I have already talked about the Big Bang. You and I already both know that we both disagree with the premise of the Big Bang. You and I disagree with the conclusion that the universe had an initial Big Bang cause. Um, but you said that it was Kabbalistic. Is that what you said? That the notion of the Big Bang was Kabbalistic? Did you
You
say
know,
that?
yes, it is, and that's correct. I mean,
Clarify that for me. I don't understand. How is the Big Bang thesis Kabbalistic? What's
well,
the cabal? What's the Kabbalion have to do with the Big Bang? The notion of the Big Bang.
well, keep in mind the theory of the Big Bang was elucidated in the early 1920s by someone who had worked with Edwin Hubble,
It
who
was
was a
Edwin Hubble
Jesuit.
himself who detected the redshift phenomenon.
Yes, but he didn't name the Big Bang. It was a Vatican
No,
sign.
that's right. That's right. It was a Jesuit. Uh, it was a theologian who put forward the idea
Yeah.
and coined the term Big Bang because he took the idea of the expansion of the universe and he just wound it backwards logically and he said, well, if we're expanding, then what happened? You just reverse time and this is how things started. Logically to him, and it made sense on its surface and it stuck. A lot of people adopted that idea.
And what you have to understand is like, look where the Jesuits started. I mean, Saint Ignatius of Loyola. I mean, it was a
Who was a
teaching
crypto
movement.
Jew?
It was
Who was a
a
crypto
crypto
Jew?
Jew, a Morano from Spain during the Counter Reformation,
Yeah, but I don't
and
want to
most of
get
his early followers were crypto Jews.
well,
Now, in the Renaissance and the Counter Reformation, in my mind, it looks at how Kabbalists and Christians and Neoplatonists kind of developed a new esoteric theology underneath the Catholic Church, right?
So what I want to know, if I could refine my question, is how is the Big Bang, or the notion or thesis of the Big Bang, Kabbalistic in nature? I understand that it came from people who appreciated the Kabbalion, or were Kabbalistic in their own research and teachings and study and adherence. So what? There was, there were crypto Jews who put forward the idea of the Big Bang. How is it related to the actual? How is it Kabbalistic in nature? Is what I want to know.
Well, the idea is taken from the Kabbalah, and I just shared a link in the chat, the private chat there, and it says it. And if you Google Big Bang Kabbalah, you'll find a bunch of links on it. So that it's not really contested that that's where the idea comes from. I mean, I don't know how known it is, but that's nevertheless the etymological origin of the idea.
Well, I tell you what, I can give you a wrench, and if you would just drop that link in the chat, so anybody in the chat wants to, they can.
Sure.
So now you got a wrench, and you can drop links. So just for the record, if anybody wants to know why Jen has a wrench, like everybody else, it's because she doesn't cause trouble, and I provide that privilege for people who want to drop information in the form of a link in the chat. So that's, let me see, I'm going to pop the chat out here and throw it in the other page.
Yeah, Rufus has a wrench on my channel too. I like to give out wrenches for people who are, same thing, basically non-troublemakers, and actually progress the conversation forward in a meaningful way, rather than just the constant slew of garbage coming out of certain people.
Well, a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and I understand that, but I just want to make it clear that most of the time when I hand out wrenches, it's because, number one, I trust you to not be an asshole, troublemaker troll in the chat whose only the purpose is to create division. I mean, I disagree with Jen on a lot of things, but she's not a troll, so I trust her there. And the other reason is because if you have a wrench, you can drop links in the chat, which is the main reason. I mean, it's nice having a lot of people that I trust as moderators, because the trolls typically don't stand a fucking chance. They don't last more than 5 seconds.
Cult Bear says Loyola's Jewishness was unproven. It doesn't really matter if someone is Jewish or not when they're making these assertions. What matters is what's the origin of the belief, right? Is it based on actual scientific observation?
That's what I was trying to cut to. That's what I was trying to drill down on. I don't really care if Loyola was a crypto Jew or not. My question was, how is the Big Bang thesis Kabbalistic in nature? So,
well, the idea is in the Kabbalah, so that's, I mean, where it comes from.
Could you give me the Reader's Digest version without making me open the link? Otherwise, it'll derail the conversation.
I don't actually have a short version of it. I just know that that's basically what it says. So Jewish mysticism offers a poetic explanation of the Big Bang and black holes.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now, Gandalf.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I just had to refresh my browser, I guess.
YouTube's been pretty fucking glitchy lately. They're making a lot of changes lately because they can't afford to operate, and they're cutting the fat out. And I don't know.
No, they can afford to operate all right. What they can't afford is people talking the truth.
Well, no, I wouldn't necessarily leap to that conclusion. While that's probably true in some sense, and I am a conspiracy theorist, so I don't deny that aspect. But let's face reality that YouTube and Google are operating at a loss. Okay, they're not a viable as an income. they're actually insolvent because what it takes to operate YouTube. Think about this right now. They have upped the download. If you want to do like a live stream, you can do now it's 12 fucking hours. Do you remember the days when it was 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Now it's like anybody and anybody who wants to can just like Zero. He starts up a live stream, he goes to fucking sleep, and 12 hours later it shuts itself down because that's the limit. 12 fucking hours of constant live streaming 12-hour videos. Think about the storage capacity when you have billions, literally a billion people on your platform using and uploading.
Yeah.
Okay? It takes server farms the size of Massachusetts.
Okay, so I can just read a little bit of this article. The Jewish mystics of the Middle Ages described the beginnings of the universe in terms
Slow down a little bit. Let us absorb this. Go ahead. Slow down.
The Jewish mystics of the Middle Ages described the beginnings of the universe in terms that correspond to the phenomena scientists are now describing, particularly when it comes to the Big Bang and black holes. And they grappled with propositions that preoccupy physicists today, such as developing a unified theory of everything. So it's worth considering how physics and mysticism might now work together to fill in the big picture. Prevailing scientific theory on the origins of the universe posits that everything began with the Big Bang. You just see here, I'll try to find the Kabbalah part. In other words, in the beginning, everything was black for a long time. Then there was light. Sounds pretty similar to what's written in the Bible. Black is a very important color in Jewish mysticism, the color from which every other hue and all of life emerge. In the Kabbalist preeminent text, the Zohar, existence is divided into a tree of life, with each branch devoted to different characteristics and dimensions of reality, represented by different colors. The supreme dimension, the crown or Keter, is black. It represents primordial darkness and the black light of creation, philosopher and forensics. Yeah, so there's not, okay, let's see here. Anyway, it just basically talks about the similarities between Big Bang and what's taught in the Kabbalah. Like, I haven't studied this extensively. I just know that the Big Bang is false because it violates causality. I don't know the specifics of the quotes in the Kabbalah that indicate it, but I have every reason to believe that this idea is the origin of what is taught as the Big Bang, because there's essentially no evidence for a Big Bang. Even like the strongest evidence that we have to support a big quote unquote Big Bang is what they call the I think it's the cosmic microwave background. Have you guys heard of that?
Yep.
Yes, it was observed in the 1960s.
So basically, I would say that that's not really evidence of a Big Bang for this reason. Basically, it's isotropic. So what does that mean? Is that it's the same no matter where you point the telescopes, you get the same cosmic background radiation levels.
All right. Well, as someone who's scientifically minded, Jennifer, my question is, would you not agree that if you can observe the same thing in all directions at relative same distance, would you not agree that that is a false reading?
No, I think it's fine. It's a prediction of my model, but a Big Bang suggests a physical localization.
Okay, so hang on. No. Let me finish. Let me finish the point. Because if you can observe, if we're referring to like the cosmic background radiation that's been observed and so supposedly mapped and photographed, if you can observe the same phenomenon at the same relative distance in all directions, and you're talking about causality, wouldn't that mean that the Big Bang happened right here on Earth?
It would mean that the Big Bang didn't have a location.
Well,
so,
but no. Well, the location is evident. If we can observe a phenomenon from all directions, that suggests that the event happened right here. Wouldn't it propagate equally like a bubble in all directions?
No, it would mean it was non-localized.
Rufus, one of the key points of Big Bang Theory is that there was a localized, infinitesimally dense point of matter and energy that just exploded at one given time.
Well, I understand the concept of the Big Bang. What I'm suggesting is, if we're going to use cosmic background radiation as an example, just for this argument example, if you look in
Yeah.
all directions and you get the same result, then that suggests you're inside the bubble. You're in the center of the bubble.
There is no center. What it suggests is that the origin of this radiation is non-localized.
If it's
Yes.
if it's non-localized, why are our readings similar or identical in all directions?
Well, that's what non-localized means. It doesn't have an origin point that's physically localized.
So then our observations are arbitrary at best.
They're not arbitrary. It's just that some things are localized and some things are non-localized. So let me just go back to this Big Bang.
Go ahead.
We're going to prediction. If the Big Bang was localized, then the prediction of that is that the Big Bang radiation, the residual radiation from the Big Bang would be coming from one location. So we would be able to we would see that in one direction there was none, and then in one direction there was a maximum amount of radiation, but we don't observe that, which then tells us that whatever is causing this radiation is non-localized. It doesn't mean it's incomprehensible. It just means that it didn't have a physical local origin, because if it did, it would have differences in the magnitude of the electromagnetic vector we were observing, which we don't observe. So that's one of the problems with Big Bang, but there are other problems with Big Bang that you can use just as easily to disprove it.
So by that analogy, then the cosmic background radiation imaging that we see should not be called cosmic background radiation. It should simply be called cosmic radiation, because it's not background, and we're not observing anything on the outer shell, because we get the same observation when we look in all directions.
Ding, 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 ding.
So it's not really, we're not looking at a bubble from our perspective. It's literally everywhere, and that's simply like I said, it's a false observation. It's not cosmic background.
We could call it isotropic cosmic radiation. I think that might be better, because that's what isotropic means. It's the same.
So we might be better off just retitling this idea of cosmic background radiation. I wouldn't call it background radiation.
Well,
My point in that was that thing is basically the strongest evidence in support of Big Bang, and it itself doesn't even suggest a localized Big Bang. So if there was Big Bang, it was a non-localized Big Bang, and then you have to ask yourself, well, what the hell is that? And then they sort of don't have answers at that point.
And the other thing you have to realize, Rufus, I've been in academia before. The nature of making scientific discoveries is there's prestige attached.
You're not telling me anything.
Keeping
I've been around.
Paradigm going.
I get it. Yep, I get that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. And so, like, there's not value in being a Halton Arp who says, well, hey, wait a second, all these observations about redshift mean that our understanding of the expansion and origin of the universe just doesn't really make much sense, because none of our observations about the way the galaxies and stars move make any sense according to that paradigm. And, well, he just gets locked out of telescope time and gets Galileo'd.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Halton Arp, and you said the same thing to me the other day.
I've always known about Halton Arp. He's a great scientist.
Halton Arp is a really key scientist that really needs a lot more recognition than he has ever received. Only fringe people even have heard his name. For those on my channel who don't know, Halton Arp was literally Hubble's assistant, who rose to take over the observatory after Hubble retired and then subsequently died. Halton Arp made observations that absolutely refute the redshift as a method of determining speed and distance of galaxies. It had nothing to do with expansion. And because Halton Arp took some photographs of a galaxy that had a quasar outside of the galaxy, but somehow it was attached via the light waves of this red shift, and there was a clear tendril in the image that connected the galaxy to the quasar. and yet the galaxy had a redshift, and the quasar had a not so redshift. So the conclusion was that it had everything to do with age rather than speed. So it's not about expansion or things traveling away from you. It's not the Doppler effect that we thought it was.
Correct. That's my understanding too. You explain that beautifully.
Okay, so we've established, or at least among the panel, we have an axiom. We've established that the Big Bang is bogus, that the redshift does not describe expansion, so therefore we can't wind the clock backwards as the Jew, Jesuit, whoever, I forget his name, who coined the term Big Bang. So we can't wind the clock backwards per se because we're not actually expanding as Hubble first proposed. And by the way, as a little gem of information, point of fact, Hubble, if I'm not mistaken, actually refuted his own findings on the redshift before he died. And now I haven't confirmed that, but that's what I've heard.
I think that's correct, but I can't confirm that either. I mean, because it's been a while since I looked at Hubble's own life and work that closely. But I'll go with that because I think you're right. But Hubble didn't make the leap. That was the issue.
No, Hubble made the observation of the redshift phenomenon.
Yeah.
He's famous for that.
But at the end of his life, when
he gets credit for the Big Bang because it was postulated that if we're expanding, then you just simply wind the clock backwards, and we must have all sucked down into a single point, and it was just it's a hypothesis that there's no evidence for it. In fact, there's evidence against it.
And that's because we have the poisonous idea of Abrahamic teleology, from Alpha to Omega with a creator God and people, and that psychology, that metaphysical psychology is playing through science when really we should be thinking more cyclically because the evidence seems to support that more than some sort of grand cosmic teleology.
Yeah, so they basically eschewed the causality axiom in favor of the Big Bang axiom because the Big Bang violates causality. And that basically really fucked up the progression of cosmology. As we can see, if you state the Big Bang as an axiom, all your subsequent computations are... Gandalf, can you mute when you're not talking? Because we can hear everything in the background.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is just another example in a long line of examples of if your axioms are wrong, everything subsequent to that is wrong. Which is why I wanted to get and hash out the axioms on that stream yesterday, and people didn't really seem too interested, and I think that's because they kind of want to just perpetually play devil's advocate. And if you accept an axiom, you can't really deviate from that axiom, so it makes it harder to just sort of throw a wrench in the works whenever someone makes a statement. Like, you remember most of the people said they thought God was undefinable, right?
Well, that was a statement that was thrown around the other night, I think loosely, but go ahead.
Well, you're essentially asserting axiomatically that the thing you're looking for, i.e. God, is undefinable. So if you assert it is not possible to define something axiomatically, you'll never be able to define it, right? Because axioms are always true. So that's why if people aren't willing to take an axiom that's not a negative, right? Because negative axioms don't really work. You're not going to be able to actually get anywhere. And that's why it's kind of a weak position to take.
No, it's a conversation ender. I see what you're saying.
Pretty much. I mean, if people want to say, well, here are my criteria for God, I don't observe that anywhere, therefore there's no God, that's one thing. But if you're saying there are literally no criteria that will ever be sufficient for me to accept that this is God, well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. And
I admit I may have actually said something like that last night. And if I did, then I apologize, and I'll retract any statement of that nature.
Well, it's understandable.
I'm not actually making the statement that God is undefinable. The statement or assertion that I'll make at this point with further consideration, the statement I'll make now is God has yet to be properly defined.
I think from what I've seen, what you said, and I agree with you, is that there is no valid evidence for a personal God, i.e., an anthropomorphic God.
So I'm trying not to commit the black swan fallacy here. Do you know what I mean? You notice how my language changed?
I don't really think it's a fallacy to say there's no evidence. Like that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without
Well, if
evidence.
I
So
was to say God is undefinable, that is actually committing a black swan fallacy. That's saying there's no such thing as black swans because I've never seen a black swan. Because if I were to make that assertion, I would be basing that assertion on the fact that I've never heard anyone actually define God. Okay? Do you know what I mean? Since I've never and trust me, I study this shit. So since I have yet to hear someone properly define God, it would be false for me to make the statement that God is undefinable, based on the idea that I've never heard anyone properly define God. That would be false, because
well,
someone could come along and define God properly, and that would blow my assertion. So that would be a black swan fallacy.
they usually assert God as axiomatic, right? Which causes its own problems.
All right, so I'll just refine my statement and I'll say that God has yet, to my knowledge, to be properly defined. And we were talking with Artemis last night, who was saying things like a lot of New Agers will say, and that God is the universe, God is everything. Well, okay, now my reply is, so what?
Yeah, my argument, I don't think that's really what Artemis was saying, but my reply to that, because that's what my definition of God is that whether you accept it or not, it gives you a better understanding of things. So I'm going based on a quasi-utilitarian argument to say that, my belief in an impersonal universal God has yielded better results. And so I'm comfortable with that axiom on that basis.
So, do you, how would you classify yourself? I don't want to. I want, I don't want to put words in your mouth or strawman you. On the theological scale, are you agnostic? Because I know that you advocate for like a scientific theology, which is kind of weird. Maybe we can get into that. So, where do you classify yourself on the theological scale?
I,
Atheist, agnostic, theist, deist. Where are you?
I don't advocate for a scientific theology. I advocate for a scientific theocracy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a pantheist.
You're a pantheist.
Yeah.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe in multiple gods.
A pantheist is the person who equates the universe to God.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad. That's a polytheist.
Yeah, you're thinking of polytheist.
My bad. My bad.
I'm not a polytheist.
Say again. Pantheist. You're a pantheist. So say again. What is your position exactly? Say again.
The universe equals God.
So
So that means I'm a monotheist, technically.
all right. So the universe, uni meaning one, verse meaning spoken or verbalization, one word. Universe, one word. You think the universe, in other words, can I assume you mean cosmos, all that we know, all matter that we can observe, you call that God?
I'm defining the universe to be everything that exists.
Everything that exists, and you define that as God.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would you do that?
It's the traditional view, and it's the least limiting view, and it can be proven to exist.
Okay, so the universe can be proven to exist. Why would you go to the extra step and call it or attribute God? Why would you attach that axiom, that ideology? Why would you attach God to this idea of everything we can observe?
It's a philosophical preference that yields superior knowledge. So
What superior knowledge is being yielded by simply attaching God to the idea of everything that we observe?
well, all the knowledge I've determined. The quantum mind hypothesis, the quantum periodic table, all that derives to some extent from a belief in a pantheistic God.
All right, so I'll ask you the same thing I asked. Oh crap! Who were we? I already left my. I said it a second ago, and now it's gone. Artemis. Um, if so, if you want to assign God in your mind, you want to call the universe, the cosmos, all that we know, although it exists, that to you is God. Um, by doing so, would you not agree that by adding the term God, that comes a lot of baggage in the form of anthropomorphized axioms that would include emotions, anger, wrath, jealousy, agency like intent and will and desire. By adding God, you bring all that baggage along.
I'm aware of the baggage of anthropomorphism, and this is the way that we can destroy that.
How?
Well, you can't, like, asserting a negative is never going to convince the majority of people. So if you just say God's not real, that's not going to convince most people. But if you say the God you worship is false, this is the true God, you have a much better chance of displacing their false beliefs and getting rid of all that baggage you mentioned.
So are you simply just adding the word God in a colloquial sense, or do you actually believe that this universe that you call God, that you ascribe God to, has will or agency in any way?
Well, it depends what you mean by will.
I'm not sure if it depends. Is there a way to depend? I mean will by the term will.
Well, what do you mean by will?
Desire, agency.
Well, I could
I think
say,
we all understand what will is.
I really don't think we do, but I think I could say that the universe has a will to not break its own laws. But that's not a human will.
Okay, so you're not anthropomorphizing the intentions. So are you not ascribing intentions?
I mean, you could call it an intention, but again, this is a question of anthropomorphism versus
Right,
impersonalism.
right. That's what I'm trying to drill down on.
Is it really an intention to not break physical laws? Or is that just how it is?
I think I see where you're coming from. So ultimately, you would say no, there's not an anthropomorphic style will as we would consider it, or an intention as we would know it. But you're saying that there are physical laws of the universe that can't be broken, that are going to do what they're going to do because of their physical laws, and you're ascribing will to that aspect of the universe.
Or you could call it the cosmic will, and it would be a way of understanding.
So by
It would,
saying cosmic will, you're really referring to like natural laws?
yeah, it would be a way of
Okay.
distinguishing human will from generalized will. And this is another way where it kind of helps us to depersonalize our understanding, which is very beneficial to sort of see that will doesn't have to be anthropomorphized. It can just be something. Like, for example, someone could ask me, well, is your God omnipotent? Well, yes, in the sense that it does everything because everything comes about from the laws of physics, but no, in the sense that my God isn't free, quote unquote, to break its own laws.
So you're speaking, I mean, it sounds like every aspect of the way you describe the universe as God is entirely metaphorical. I mean,
Yeah, it's a
you're literally just using metaphor to describe natural law.
yeah, it's a teaching tool.
Okay. Well, then I don't have issue with that.
I don't either. I don't. I think most honest people wouldn't, and that's why I choose this tack because it works on atheists just as well as it works on
It
theists.
worked on it worked on me. I mean, if that's what you mean, then that's what you mean, and I get it.
It works better on atheists than theists.
Okay, so the point of contention that I have is most people don't fucking get that. I mean, you and I had to just really have a serious conversation without the 10 people distracting us to drill down to what it is you actually mean.
Well, you have to understand, Rufus, that these things are not easy to understand. It takes a
Okay,
lot of.
that's why I have a point of contention. They're not easy to understand. So most people, when they hear folks like you say words like God, and what you really mean is the universe, natural law, you know, They don't understand that those words don't translate to everyone else. That's my problem. So when you attach the word God to universe natural law, why don't you just say universe natural law? Why do you have to say God?
Because other people are abusing the term, and that's causing a tremendous amount of suffering, and my goal is to diminish suffering.
Okay. I don't really see you diminishing suffering. Actually, I see a contention because there's a confusion and most people don't seem to really fully understand. Um, I mean, like I said, you and I had to hash this out for 20 minutes until I figured it out, and only a handful of people are watching us right now. I don't know if it's I don't know how many people are watching us right now. The chat's pretty lively, but
Well, Rufus, most people lack your inquisitiveness and intelligence and willingness to have this kind of conversation, and
that's yeah, that's the actually that's what I see as a problem. Because
It's not a
when
problem.
you start bandying about words like God, and what you really mean is natural law slash universe, most people are not going to understand that. They're going to go to the colloquial term, and they're going to go, "Oh, she imagines a bearded guy who judges you when you die. Who cares about whether you wear mixed fabrics or who you have sex with in what position?" You know what I mean? So when you attach a word like God to an idea metaphorically like the universe and natural law, you're fucking with a lot of people's brains who really don't understand exactly what you're talking about. You're actually miscommunicating.
It might seem that way to you, but the way I see it is that I'm diagnosing people's state of mind as a means of judging them to see how fit they are for the role of theocratic authority or philosophical authority. If you hate the word theocratic so much,
I
you could say philosophical authority.
well, okay, that last word, the what authority? Last thing you said?
Philosophical?
Philosophical authority.
Right. So if someone is a mess of false beliefs and confusion and ignorance, they're not going to be very good at philosophy, are they?
Right.
So if I can say something that gives me information about how the person thinks, i.e., positing God is equal to the universe, which upon closer inspection doesn't actually violate any causal laws, but for a lot of people causes an emotional reaction, well, that tells me these people are highly emotional and I can't trust them to make logical, sober decisions. So they're unfit for theocracy or philosophical government or scientific government, however you want to word it. That is essentially what I'm doing
Are
by
you
using rhetorical strategy.
are you telling me that this is all calculated on your part and you're doing it as a litmus?
Absolutely.
Really?
I'm
You
good, Rufus. I'm real good.
you're doing this intentionally to trigger people so you can determine who is prepared to accept your information and who's not.
It's not about accepting my information. It's about determining who is sober-minded enough to take on the burden of responsibility of social engineering.
Um, why wouldn't you just put out your information in a more concise way so that people can literally just come to it, make up their own minds, and all you can do is influence society like the rest of us. Your words are no better than mine. We influence by our words and by our actions. So, I mean, why all this background game playing, it seems?
Well, my blog has over 115 articles on it, and they don't all mention God. And there's tons of information in there that's not related directly to theology or theocracy at all. So I have done that. I just employ multiple strategies simultaneously.
Okay, so you've just, all right, how about we move the conversation towards, if it's okay with you, this model that you have uh, put out there that many of us are aware of. You keep saying you have this model, and some people have pressed you on it, and it's that conversation usually turns sour. Very often because there's too many people in the room, and you get attacked from all angles. So now it's just us. Um, so now's your chance. What model? What model do you have? What can you tell me about your model?
It's a unified field model that predicts all physical phenomena through employing 4 different actions.
What predictions have you made?
Stellar formation, nuclear reactivity, quantum mind.
Tell me about stellar formation.
Um,
How have you predicted stellar formation, and what evidence do you have to show that you've made the prediction?
well, I can predict it based on something called uncertainty, or something called more technically, it's the Pauli exclusion principle. Are you familiar with that idea?
I'm familiar with Heisenberg uncertainty. Pauli exclusion is vaguely familiar to me. You might have to brush
So
me up on that one.
Pauli exclusion principle says that 2 fermions can't occupy the same quantum state. So 2 massive quanta cannot occupy the same quantum state. So I don't know if you're familiar with chemistry at all.
I'm familiar with chemistry.
So you're aware that there are orbitals, and on the first
Yep.
orbital,
Yes. Yes.
then there's 8, etc.
Yes.
You're aware. So this is an example.
That's the current model, but it's also being refuted. But go ahead.
This is an example of quantum state exclusion. So like it's the same reason you can't fit a third electron into the first valence.
Okay.
Only room for 2. So in other words, there's a limit to how dense matter can be. And
Okay.
that limit is basically when all the quantum states are occupied, it's not possible to fit any more quanta in there because it's saturated. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
I understand the model. I have to voice this. I could be wrong. And while that seems valid and it's certainly the scientific consensus, it actually sounds like a black swan fallacy.
Well, you can apply that to anything. You can say maybe this law will be violated sometime. I'm saying it's never been violated. There's tons of
Okay,
evidence.
exactly. I'm not refuting it. I'm just saying that this is what we observe, and these are the statements that are made by quantum physicists that it can't get any denser because all the orbital states and their valences are occupied. They can't fit anymore. I understand that principle. I understand the statements that are made by quantum physicists. But until we discover something that we haven't discovered, that's when science changes. That's the good thing about science, that it's never definitive. It's always open to revisionism.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine with revisionism because we only accept the causal axiom. So if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Jen, I've got evidence that you can fit a third electron into the first valence," I would say, "Oh, cool. Let me have a look at that, and I'll update my model based on this new information." And I'm totally fine with that. But I mean, at this point, it's pretty well established that there are certain valences, and that's basically it. And I don't know how you would establish that you could fit more electrons into the valences than what we already know. But I mean, if it happens, it happens, right?
Yeah, I guess.
That's the
I
power of
mean,
science.
I'm,
You're always
I'm,
open for new evidence,
yep,
right?
yep, and I'm perfectly willing to have conversation based on the current consensus because, and I hammered this home either last night or the other night, that science is largely based on consensus, and the smartest people in the world try their best to undo and out disprove each other, and when they can't, then they come to a consensus and they say, well, that's the best model, and until you can fucking falsify it, this is what we're going to go with. And that's what science really boils down to. After hypothesis, after theorizing and testing, it comes down to consensus where they try to disprove each other, and when they can't, then it's a consensus.
Well, that's the power of science, right? And when people like, what's her name, Influence Freedom, she's really smart. I like her, and she was saying like how there were problems with the Big Bang, and I agree with that. And that's not a problem intrinsic to the philosophy of science. That's a problem in the misapplication of science, right? So those are 2 different things. So the only way to beat bad science is with better science.
That's exactly
And
right. Yep.
it's the same with religion, essentially. The only way to beat a bad religion is with a better one. The atheist position is a position that may be intellectually honest, but most people are simply physiologically incapable of taking that position.
Right, and for most of my listeners who understand that I have a conspiratorial mind, I'll just restate the obvious. My position is that science is not, it's not all it's cracked up to be, that there is corruption within science. There's all kinds of reasons and all kind of methods for science to be corrupted. People have jobs, they have tenures, they have families and incomes, they have positions of power, they have prestige and reputations, they have livelihoods based on some of these notions. And when somebody comes along and completely refutes everything, then a lot of people's careers come to a crashing halt. There's a lot of embarrassment for a lot of high-ranking people, and so there's, you know, understandably, there's pushback. Even if it's the truth, there's going to be pushback. Like when Velikovsky came along, his ideas were so fucking radical, they decided they were going to burn his books.
Well, you see, this is part of the problem: is science has gotten in the last century or so far more controlled by governments and corporations that fund it and that have their own political and economic agendas.
Exactly. Well,
Such
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish.
Yeah, so I mean, science in the 19th century, kind of the golden age to some degree, was tinkerers and retired aristocrats, and even some well-educated commoners, middle-class people, just exploring and then forming little organizations with one another if they have affinities for certain kinds of scientific investigation to compare notes on their experiments and observations. I mean, and it wasn't funded by central authority to the same degree. I mean, the Royal Society may have been an exception to that, but for the most part in Victorian England, it was your aristocrat who was retired, who just liked watching birds, would document them, and there you get ornithology and the Audubon Society.
Yeah.
Catch my drift.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make it clear that I'm aware that science, while science is the best we have, it's still not perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
even the method of science is still the best we have, and of course, it takes people to do science, and people are corrupt. So there.
That's why we have to be very careful, and that's why we have to open up the doors to as many people as possible who are competent to understand science, right? If somebody's just going to sit there and say, "No, this is undefinable," we don't really need to hear them out. But if someone says, "Hey, listen, I have a really good point here. You've made a mistake," we have to be humble enough to be open to that. And that's why it's so important to talk to people like Rufus, who may not agree on all posits, but when we drill down, wait, maybe we don't actually disagree. We just have a different approach philosophically to the same goal, right? So
Pretty much. In most cases, yeah.
it's about distinguishing between intentions. And that's really hard to do, because if you come up to someone and say, "Hey, buddy, what's your intention?" They can't answer that question. Right? But if you ask the right questions, you
Right.
can infer what they're all about. You always leave the door open, right? Because people do change, and that's fine. But you can get a lot of meaningful information just by asking the right questions, and that's kind of why I take this rhetorical strategy. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say I'd taken birth in a different time, and we had a different problem. Let's say we had too much religious fanaticism and everybody was an idolater, and there were a bunch of out of control cult leaders having fucking orgies all around the place, and people were degenerate. I would say, I'm starting up a philosophy and I'm an atheist. Do you see why I would do that? Because it's about bringing things into balance. So right now we're at a more atheist, like, we've essentially thrown the baby out with the bathwater with regards to theism. We've said, a lot of people have said, like, there's nothing good in theology. There's nothing to learn. But in history, this is how we basically learn. So I have to say, okay, Church of Entropy time. And, if you're an atheist, you're just going to have to deal with it, because it's relative to the situation I find myself in, rather than being indicative of an exact position that I have. The position is more for the purposes of social reform and to make people understand that there is knowledge in religion.
Oh, you just broke up. Last thing I heard. The last thing I heard. There is knowledge in religion. Last thing I heard.
Yeah, it looks like her screen froze too.
Oh, she might have dropped out. She'll be back in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might be qualified to.
Hey, what's up, Darts? I don't think I've ever seen Darts in my live chat. Good to see you, bud. Go ahead, Gandalf. Sorry, I had to give a shout out.
Oh, no worries. You have to entertain the audience, and it's always important to occasionally do a digression to address the audience. I mean, it's nice being on our channels. I mean, sort of we're a little more under control. What was I going to say? Oh, when she talks about, like, I know, like, you balked a lot, and I understand it. I mean, look, I mean, you don't want to live in a world where people drink the blood of Jesus or suck babies' foreskins off and, like, have blood sacrifices to weird desert gods and then all these crazy holy books and this all that shit turns you the fuck off. It turns off a lot of people if you're kind of mindset. It turns me off. We agree there, I think. But so when Church of Entry mentioned something like scientific theocracy, for instance, right? The issue is all governments function and all political systems function as theocracies, because when you think about God, it really is such that is everyone having problems here? Were you there, Rufus?
I'm here. I hear you just fine.
Okay, all right, because I saw her drop out. So that
Yeah, she'll be back.
that functionally, like the God functions as like the nodal point of society. It's the highest value or attribute. Under liberal democratic capitalism, it's the people and their supposed, freedom and which kind of devolves into license and degeneracy like we have now, because people don't know what their freedom is really for. There's no real meaning for it other than the self-referential kind of narcissism that you get in this kind of highly democratic society. I mean, look at what we have, just a constant culture of celebrity and consumerism.
So the issue I have is God has already been anthropomorphized, right? I mean, every culture in the world historically has already defined God as Sky Daddy, and the Overwatcher, or Watchers if you're a polytheist.
Well, let's leave it
So,
more in that, like, we're still like
I mean, in the
our
colloquial vernacular, when you just drop that word, those three letters, God, when
yeah.
you drop that word in any sentence in any conversation, instantly people already recognize it as an anthropomorphized being who's going to judge you when you die. Something that has agency. This being that had the desire to create the universe, and he did it because he wanted to, and it's he, and you better do your thing or he will judge you, and there's fear and hell and heaven, there's carrots and sticks, and all that baggage comes with it when you drop that word.
Yeah, but because we're soaked in Jewish and Christian metaphors.
But if you want to get away from all that baggage, how about we don't use the word theocracy? If we're going to talk about scientific theocracy, and I wish
But
Jen was here right now to defend this, but if we're going to use scientific theocracy, the word theocracy, theo, means God. The idea of theocracy is a government based on the notion of God. And when you drop that God word, everybody already knows we're talking about an anthropomorphized being who gives a shit who you have sex with. What
well,
if you ate shellfish?
but in order to get rid of, like, the God who cares about you eating kosher shellfish or like worshiping Jesus and all this shit, the way to counteract it directly rather than doing an atheistic way, in which case you're trying to prove a negative, it's better just to make science itself, which would move beyond such a ridiculous concept of God, the God principle itself. That's the point. Like,
Well,
it's a strategy that gets around the problem of the people being brainwashed into believing in this kind of daddy desert sky god shit.
okay, I agree with that, except I would only correct the part where you said when you mentioned atheist and you're trying to prove or disprove, that's not what atheists are doing at all.
So what are they
Oh,
doing?
Jen needs me to re-add her to the conversation. Let me see if I can do that. Just a second, everybody. How? Let me see if I invite people. I think I've already got her. Yep, that should do it. Jen, I think that should do it. She should be here in a second. I don't know if she was booted. If she was, I'd like to get the bottom of that. No, nobody has the right to boot my fucking guest or panel members. I'll be the one to decide who comes and who goes. In fact, this is a private hangout chat that we're having, so I don't think anybody else even had the ability to boot her unless you did it, Gandalf. You're the only other one in here.
No, I didn't do that at all. I think just like when my browser had something weird happen to it and I dropped out for a couple minutes, something similar might have happened with her. Because just like my browser froze and I was kicked out of Hangouts. Like, what the hell is my browser doing? I think she probably had something similar happen to her. It's been buggy today on YouTube. And we don't need to go back into that.
All right, there's the link, Jen. It's in the chat right now. So as soon as you're in here, I'll delete that link. So.
Yeah, but I mean, it's important to, like, I think the way Jen uses theocracy is she looks at it from a functional and or computational point of view, not so much from a metaphysical point of view. I mean, the two, they're not mutually exclusive, but like under democracy, right? I mean, under liberal democracy, we worship things like liberty and equality and all of these things as like godlike totems. I mean, they function theocratically.
Hang on, Gandalf. I'm so sorry. I'm
No
so I'm so sorry. I was disengaged. I didn't hear you. Jen said she thinks it's a problem on her end. She says when I click the link, it sends me to an empty Hangout. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't need freeloaders. So I tried adding Jen. If I click the add,
Let me see if I can email her and do it mine.
hey, hang on. You know what, Jen? I've got Jennifer on Skype. Let me try this. Go ahead, Gandalf. You try your end, and I'll try mine. We'll see if we can get her back in here. Get everybody.
All right.
Where did her damn... Jen, I thought I was talking to her on Skype. I thought I had her on Skype. What happened?
Yeah, I sent her the Hangout window I have now. You might have to start a new Hangout. I don't know.
Oh, there she is. I keep overlooking it. Here you go, Jen. This should be the... Try this one, Jen. Check your Skype. All right, I'll tell you what. While we're waiting for Jen, I'm going to go make another restroom break. Gandalf, if you would like to jabber your jaws or take a break or whatever. Everybody, I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Hey guys.
Hey, well, Jen is back. Rufus is just taking a quick bladder break.
I have no clue what happened. It just booted me, and then I tried to rejoin, and it just was sending me to an empty hangout. But this one worked, so I guess the issue, whatever the issue was, got resolved. Yay!
The same thing happened to me, 20, 30 minutes ago, which is odd.
I think Hangouts might just be a little bit buggy, which sucks because the whole point of getting OBS was to keep using Hangouts. Now, if Hangouts is fucked, then that's the problems never end.
Well, I think in the long run, at least for my thing, which I got to develop all the rules for it. I've been thinking about it all day, and it's stressing me out. But we need a better scientifically minded priest class. We can't live in a world in which like we have fluoridated water and GMO foods that are killing us and bad drugs. Infrastructure which is collapsing, people's psychology which is breaking down, people's social networks, particularly kith and kin networks, breaking down. I mean, this is at the root of why we're so damn miserable. And to be honest, I mean, this is where I disagree a lot with libertarian types. Maybe not Rufus, but libertarian types more generally, the kinds that are obsessed with the economy. Is like the economy is not a particularly high value. I mean, you want people to work and people to own property and all that stuff. But we shouldn't structure society around, well, how many numbers do people have in bank accounts or in stock markets and stuff like that. That seems relatively foolish. If anything, that should be derivative of the fact that you have a healthy population and they're able to accumulate wealth because they're healthy, and to encourage that population's evolution and greater health still more in future generations. I mean, I don't like worshiping the economy. I mean, I was when I visited my friend who was in a hotel, the Christian friend, for a business thing. You know, we overheard a couple ladies walk by, and one of them was carrying a shopping bag. She said, "I did my duty for the economy," and I nearly just like looked at my friend and was like, gave him a pained look, like, now you see why I'm like so upset the way things are. I don't want to live in a fucking shopping mall. You know, aren't there higher and more sublime things in life than we shop so corporate profits go up and bank stocks go up?
Well, not according to some people, and that's why I say that USA essentially is a mercantilist theocracy.
And
There's
that
no values.
and that's
So why do you keep injecting the word theocracy?
As a teaching tool.
Do you not see that there is probably a better teaching tool? That's a confusing teaching tool?
I already explained to you not too long ago why I have to use the theocratic angle as opposed to the philosophy angle. Okay, it's just a sign of the times.
Well, if you use the philosophical angle, I agree. Not a lot of people are up to speed, up to par on modern philosophy. I'm certainly no expert myself, but I'm ahead of a lot of people, and I understand that there's a ton of people who just know nothing about philosophy. So I get that aspect. I get it. The problem I have is it's misleading. It's perhaps disingenuous when you add God to the mix. You already acknowledge, we've established that it comes with baggage. Here's the problem. If you use philosophy, it actually doesn't come with baggage. It's simply starting from a point of ignorance where people have an opportunity to learn about philosophy and learn about your arguments without the baggage. Do you know what I mean?
I see your point. It just would be violating my tradition to do that. Excuse me, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, okay. You have a tradition. Can you describe that? What tradition?
It's a scientific religion.
Again, you're doing it again. You're in a scientific religion. Why are you doing that?
Because that's what it is.
How is it a religion? Is there a dogma?
Yes.
Oh, really? Science doesn't have a dogma.
Yes, it does. Everything has a dogma. It's axioms or dogmas. There are axioms in science. There are axioms in any system that makes logical statements.
Well, science might have a hierarchy. So I'm going through the list of equivalencies, comparing science to religion. And science is so far apart from religion. There's a hierarchy. Okay. Is there fancy dress? Is there a specific book that was handed down by an all-knowing being, a supernatural being? Is there
We
anything
don't,
supernatural involved? Can
we
you
don't have,
pray to science?
we don't have in our religion. Our
Is
religion
is there is there worship involved in science? What other comparisons can we make? I mean, there's more disassociates than there are associates between the two.
Well, it depends what you mean by worship. If you mean focusing on something a lot, yeah, scientists focus on logic and reason a lot. Are they worshiping it? Well, I think that's a semantic distinction rather than a true distinction.
No. Oh, no. And I'm a semantic kind of guy. I love semantics. It's absolutely not semantic. The worship of a deity is no comparison to people who adhere to scientific methodology.
Well, what's worship?
Reverence, um, piety, fear.
Scientists Scientists are afraid of making false models. They revere the scientific model, or the scientific philosophy. There is a degree of reverence in science. It's about putting your emotions aside and going based on facts and logic.
Okay, so let's look up the colloquial definition of worship. How about we do that real quick? Why not? I guess I want to go here.
Maybe awe is a better term. Like when you think about like the stars and stuff like that, Rufus, like an awe at the immense beauty and expanse and mystery of the universe. I mean, that is something which inspires awe. I almost prefer awe rather than worship for thinking about these things.
Okay, so I got reverence correct. It says here the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration, and you can apply that to science. Okay, people admire, they adore science, they love science. The feeling of feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. That's worship. That's the killer right there. For a deity. Those are the last three words of that sentence. It's only a one sentence, short sentence definition. The feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. So,
Okay,
I guess that
deity.
doesn't apply to science because there's no deity involved. There's no supernatural.
Well, what's a deity?
Oh, you really want to break that down? It's the sun.
Well, we have to. We have to
Okay,
break it
okay,
down. You're
okay.
defining.
A deity is the. All right. If you ask me, a deity is the sun. It's a word that ultimately, through etymology, you can break that word down 18 ways from Sunday, and every time it brings you back to the fucking sun. That's why in Spanish they say Buenos dias.
Well, if we
Dias. How
just
about
look at the definition, it's a god or a goddess, divine status, quality, or nature. So the divine thing in science is the scientific method. So it is the deity of science. And this is coming back to my point that all systems of human governance function theocratically. Can't avoid it because it's just how humans order information.
okay? So maybe definitionally that works. And I've said this before. You know, it looks good on paper. Maybe this is where I have a point of contention. Maybe we need to drop the baggage and stop using words that involve and invoke a anthropomorphized deity known as Sky Daddy with a beard who judges you and cares what position you have sex in.
That's why I take the position of an impersonal God, and I defended an impersonal God position when I debated Claire, because that's the only way to displace all these false personal anthropomorphic gods.
Well, in that case, I have a serious problem because I strongly disagree with the idea of a personal God. Because
I do,
now all of a sudden you've turned God into something subjective. So if it's
I
God for
do,
you, then it's God for me.
I do too, Rufus. I don't agree with personal God.
We all agree with you here, Rufus.
Oh, okay. So then why did you go there?
Well, but Rufus, like maybe we can help you answer this question this way, right? Like, I mean, I don't know Jen's religious background as a kid. You grew up like a crazy fundy Pentecostal, right? And it's interesting. I had a Pentecostal Christian friend of mine visit me last week. I grew up Roman Catholic, right? And so, I had a lot of issues with that. So, it might be useful going over. I mean, I don't want you to reveal too much personally if that's uncomfortable, but like
I'm
describe
fine.
your memories of being a young Christian,
Uh-huh.
and and when what you started, what kind of disturbed you about the church you went to or the people you ran into, what were your first questions that weren't being answered by your pastor or your fellow congregants or your parents, maybe.
Well, I've got two stories I could tell you if you're interested, and
I am interested because
and
this might help get to the root of kind of our definitional
I mean
problem.
I have my own baggage a little bit because I was raised in the crazy of crazies. The Pentecostals are fucking nuts, and
Oh, they are.
I have at least two stories that are somewhat slightly traumatic from the position of from the position of a child because I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old during these years, and
And let me guess already, right before you go forward, even when you were 3, 4, or 5, you were the kid that always asked why and just wouldn't shut the fuck up.
yeah, I was one of those kids.
I was one of those kids too, so I could kind of sense where you might be going with some of this. But
All right, so imagine an 8-year-old kid, You're 8 years old. You're in a church setting. As an 8-year-old kid, you already don't want to be there. So you're in a church setting. You're 8 years old. You're surrounded by 10 or 12 parishioners. So a couple you might know, most of them you don't. They all are reaching over each other's shoulder to put their hands on you. This is the laying of hands ceremony and they're all speaking in tongues. So you're literally surrounded 360 degrees by more adults, as many adults as it takes to get their fucking hands literally touching you. Okay? So everybody's got their hands on you from all directions. They're reaching over each other to touch you. And every one of them is speaking in tongues.
Yeah, that's creepy if you're an 8-year-old.
And they're not going to stop until you acquire the ability to speak in tongues. So this is your ceremony. This is
never interested in doing that.
Okay, so this is nothing short of trauma. This is trauma-based mind control for children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I distinctly remember this moment. I distinctly remember faking it and making up some gibberish, yada yada, whatever I could spit off my fucking tongue to make them, because I knew they weren't going to stop. So I started rattling off some gibberish just so they would fucking stop. And I was like 8 years old, and I made that decision. You better fake it, because they're not going to leave you alone. That was my only way out.
Yeah, I mean, how long at the laying of hands or whenever, because I guess they were trying to get you to get saved or whatever. How long were they in that sort of speaking in tongues mode?
I don't know how long. It was, you're talking about 40 years ago, so I can't tell you how long it was. It was minutes. That's long enough. It's like a car crash. When you get into a car crash, you remember every microscopic detail in that short 2 seconds event. You know what I mean? It could have been only a few seconds. It doesn't matter. I was a child. I wanted out. And I've seen this ceremony performed on my friends in church. I've seen it performed before. And when it was my turn, I knew they weren't going to stop until I started rattling off some damn gibberish. That was the only way to make them stop. Because that ceremony goes on until you start blathering.
Okay, yeah. What's your other story? Because that is a Pentecostal kind of experience.
The other story was my father was dating a woman, and she was a little bit nuts, and they used to have screaming matches and fights. And near the end of their relationship, right before divorce, my grandmother, who was the source of my Pentecostal upbringing, she brought the local pastor. She lived out of state, but she came and stayed with us temporarily during this transition. And she grabbed a local Pentecostal pastor, and they came to the house and performed an exorcism on the house. And they walked up and down the hallways, rattling off their verbal gibberish in the form of speaking in tongues, and they were throwing holy water on the fucking walls. And I'm, 8.5, 9 years old ish, and my father and his second or third wife are already having trouble, so it's already a traumatic, uneasy experience time of my life. And now I've got my grandmother with this fucking pastor blessing my house, cursing fucking demons.
Yeah, so this all happened within these two events are like a year or two apart.
Yeah.
So you were traumatized by a false religion, and that's what the scientific theocracy would ban, is this type of nonsense. So we wouldn't allow children to be abused by these false preachers. We wouldn't force anyone to join a religion.
So yeah, I mean, I make no bones about the idea or the fact that I do indeed have some religious baggage. And it's not that I've been accused, like most atheists, I've been accused, you hate God. I don't hate God. I don't believe he exists. You can't hate something that you don't believe exists. I don't hate Lord Voldemort either. You know what I mean? I don't hate, what's his Theon, or what's his name? The villain from, Marvel comics. Can't remember his damn name. You know what I mean? I don't.
I think you hate the misapplication of religion, and we do too.
I do. I hate the misapplication of religion. I see it. I've experienced it. I see it in other people. I see other people being convinced of false ideologies, and then they spend their time, their lives, their emotional energy, their physical energy, their money, their and then they go and they lobby and they vote, and that affects other people who don't believe in their crazy ideology. This is what really bothers me is when people's. I don't care if you believe fairies fly out of your butt. I don't care if you believe that leprechauns visit you every night and they give you meaning and purpose. I don't fucking care. You can believe whatever craziness you want to, but when you start legislating what I have to do, when your fucking crazy beliefs start affecting my life directly, now I got a problem.
Agreed. This is why we will ban the promotion of false religions as truth. Because if they're promoted as truth, it convinces people to vote for legislation and whatnot to get them to fuck with your life.
Yeah, exactly. That's my main gripe is people who are harming both themselves and others vis-a-vis their false beliefs. That's
You
a huge
That's why if you want to promote a belief as true, you need to get it scientifically verified, and the community will work together to figure out if it's true or not. And we have conversations just like this to do it. I mean, and this is great. I mean, these are the kind of conversations I live for, and this is why I like you, Rufus.
Thanks. And again, I don't deny that I have baggage,
Oh, of course not.
but I don't. I mean, I absolutely was raised in a situation where there's literal, actual, undeniable, objective fucking child trauma going on here.
Yeah, it's child abuse is what it is to be surrounded by, crazy parents with a crazy religion. And like the pastor coming to your house, throwing water all over the place, chasing out demons, and all the parishioners are nuts. I mean, that's a fucking hell of a lot of shit to go through.
My church was one step away from, dancing and handling rattlesnakes.
Oh,
we didn't do that, okay? Not my church, but that's what Pentecostals do.
you sound, your story sounds a lot like, Keith Preston is at Attack the System. I mean, he's a hardcore anarchist. Your views are a lot like his. And he grew up in, you're a Southern person, right?
No, actually Pennsylvania, Northern.
Oh, Pennsylvania. Well, he grew up in the backwoods of Virginia, and he went to a snake charming church, right? And they were all into Christian fundamentalism and talking in tongues and the new Israel and Zionism and all this shit. And it's like this shit. But he has all sorts of stories on his website about how batshit his church experience was, and a lot of it was like yours. And it's like it turned him into a very, very severe atheist. I mean, for a thinking person to be surrounded by such false gods and such crazy beliefs, it's really traumatic.
It's actually fucking criminal. When you put a 7 or 8 year old child through what I went through, that's actually criminal. That should be considered criminal.
We agree. I think that should be criminal.
It's literally fucking trauma to a child.
Yeah, and I'm radically against child abuse.
It's It's emotionally traumatic. End of story.
Oh yeah.
No, there's no fucking question.
Wouldn't it be better if they wanted to promote spirituality in you? They took you to a mountain and you're like with the trees and looking at the stars. That wouldn't be abusive. That would be awe-inspiring.
Well, no, absolutely not. Having
nature.
Conversations and showing. No, absolutely not. No, but when you're a child and you're literally surrounded by adults, they literally have their hands physically on you, and they're talking in fucking tongues, and none of them understand each other. And I would put money that none of them understood even what they were saying.
I'd put money on that too.
None of them could translate what they were saying themselves, which is part of the fucking Holy Spirit because he's talking through you in some unknown language and nobody knows, but that's okay because it's all for you. And that's where personal God comes into play because it's your personal God speaking through you in some unknown language that, by the way, doesn't coincide with anybody else's language, and you couldn't repeat if your life depended on it. You couldn't repeat any fucking phrase if your life depended on it. If you try to test these people with the gibberish that they spout, and you say, well, what do you think you said here? And what do you think you said there? Because there are linguistics who have put this shit to the test, and it fails every fucking time. People who have cracked codes of all kind of linguistic codes, you know what I mean? The best fucking code breakers. This bullshit. It's. I'm sorry, I'm getting triggered. This is fucking bullshit. It's trauma for a child.
Well, and there's passages from the Pauline letters where they talk about speaking in tongues and all this stuff. So this was going back 2,000 years ago, and Paul of Tarsus was an evil fucking cultist that was putting this thing through all these Greek fishing towns. He was teaching these people this shit. I mean, these are people that are once heirs to the a society which created, Aristotle and Stoicism, and they're getting this thrown at them. And then you wonder why the Eastern Roman Empire may have lasted a while, because Byzantium, the city, was powerful, but it collapsed quickly and was cannon fodder for the Muslims at one point because they spent centuries doing the same shit to their kids that was done to you.
Hey, let me throw this out to the chat real quick. You guys, do me a favor. How many people are watching? Because I'm not on that page. I'm trying to keep this open because my OBS is sharing my screen right now.
23, Rufus.
23.
Okay, cool. So I got a decent audience. I want to make an announcement. I am doing a Conwick show Friday. For those who don't know, that's Conspiracy or Not Here We Come show. We're gonna do a show Friday. It'll be 7 o'clock Eastern, like standard, like we always do time. And Josh is in the chat, so he knows now that I'll be doing a Conwick show 7, and we cut it down from 3 to 2. So I should be closing it up at about 9 o'clock. So when Josh wants to do his 13th hour, we shouldn't be stepping on each other's toes. And the topics this Friday will be deep fake, which I see as a fucking huge, huge problem. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the recent event in Lancaster, which is now proven to be a hoax. And I'm going to expose how big of a hoax. It's a lot bigger than they're acknowledging, and it's funny that they are acknowledging any of it, by the way. And the other thing is this fucking reporter, Andy No. We're going to cover Andy No a little bit. He's a fucking bullshit artist. And so those are the 3 topics that we'll be covering this Friday.
Well, be sure to. I'm gonna. In order to, is it gonna be on your channel, Rufus?
Yeah, it'll be on my channel Friday night, 7 p.m. Should be our start time.
I click the bell, so it should tell me, right?
Yeah, it ought to, if YouTube does its job.
Now that it didn't do it for Church of Entropy one week, and I accidentally stream cucked her without knowing it because it didn't send me the fucking notification. I rely on the notification when I had the Google Hangouts on Theater View. Pissed me off because I don't intend to stream cuck anybody, and I use my notifications to move from stream to stream. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh, I mean, see, Rufus, like my thing is, like, I do like the fact that you're into all these conspiracies. When you have a mindset of scientific truth seeking, your ability to penetrate these conspiracies and see how the faking works becomes just that much more powerful. That's why I've always pushed you. Well, I did such a bad job of it. That's why I've always pushed you to, like, have a few scientific axioms. It allows you to become even more superpowered than you are.
I think we agree on axioms, basically. Rufus says he's causality.
Yeah, I mean, you get, like, I'm interested in the Lancaster thing too. I've seen a few things about it. I'm now excited for your Friday show and then 13th hour. I want to be on it. I want to know. Like, you have a lot you can teach me, Rufus. I'm actually kind of excited now.
So, okay, since Jennifer brought up the causality motion that we do agree on as a determinist, I'm all about causality. then let's do the regress, and it's not necessarily an infinite regress, but let's regress and take causality back to let's try to suss out a starting point. So, is there, in your mind, Jennifer, the question is there a starting point in your mind?
Yeah, the universe is uncaused. So no, there's no starting point, but there's just we accept that the universe is uncaused, and we assert that because number one, there's no evidence of a cause, and number two, mass cannot be created or destroyed.
Well, I can't disagree with any of that. Because
Good. I mean,
I don't subscribe. I no longer subscribe to the Big Bang, which means that there is no first initial moment or cause. And I do agree that the universe, as far as we know, is uncaused until somebody can provide evidence otherwise. Um, and so, I mean, I have no disagreement with any of those axioms.
I think it's kind of nice to perceive the universe as being without a creator. Honestly, I like the idea of it just being without a cause.
Well,
Just always.
that's fantastic. Then stop using God and stop using theocracy as in your vernacular, because you're invoking baggage.
For you, perhaps, because you
No,
have a lot
I
of
see it.
trust.
Not for me. I mean, I see it in other people because I understand that other people don't understand where Jen is coming from. So when you start dropping those words, the God word and the theocracy word, in other people who don't understand exactly what Jen means, her definitions, which I agree upon, people don't understand that, and so you just dragging baggage into the conversation.
I
That's
thought I
all.
already explained why I do this.
Well, okay, and I explained why I think there's a better way to do it, and that maybe is not the most helpful way.
Well, maybe you can choose a slightly different tack in doing it. You can more emphasize the philosophical side of it, and you can just reduce God to the function of the universe, and then use the word God a lot less often, perhaps.
Well, I did actually. I said drop God, drop the word theocracy,
Yeah.
and just go with what you define it as, which is natural law or the universe. Use those terms and just leave the baggage out of it. And if other people don't understand those concepts, then you're starting from a fresh learning point where people can learn and grow from that point without the baggage to begin with. Because anytime you drop the God word, it comes with tons of baggage. And we know this because, what, 4/5 of the world's population are theistic of some sort, or deistic at least.
Well, and the Jewish and Christian God, or at least a God like that, is the God model operating in the back of their head.
But even atheists have heard of God, and most atheists are revised or reformed Christians or reformed Muslims. So even the atheists know about this idea of God, the anthropomorphized idea of God. That's my problem. Is this it's anthropomorphized and it comes with all that baggage. So
Well, but
I'm saying drop the vernacular.
but like from Church of Entropy's perspective, and I see the way her strategy works is that she is quietly subverting that so that when people start talking about God, the more her message gets out, people will talk about God and then equate it with the universe, and we get rid of the personal Abrahamic God.
Well, it's a good tag word. Okay, so if you're on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, I mean, it's a good word to tag and get more attention because when you drop that word, you're going to get a lot of theistic people paying more attention.
Well, and the point is, like, the reason Jen does it is to fight the theists. I mean, it's not so much to fight people like you, maybe. It's to fight the people that are like the Christ cucks.
Yeah, honestly, some of my best devotees are or were atheists. It's actually an intellectually more honest position to take, given all this anthropomorphism. So,
Well, I'm not arguing with your position. I'm arguing with your vernacular.
yeah,
Again, I'm a
don't,
semantic kind of guy.
don't have any reason to accept your opinion as authoritative, right?
What does an authoritative opinion have to do with it? Is it a good opinion or not?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you want me to take your opinions seriously, you have to prove to me why I should. I mean, I've got a lot of people trying to tell me, so why should I listen to you?
Well, I thought I already gave you a good explanation, and I'm pretty sure I heard you agree that it was a reasonable explanation.
And then I explained to you why I was doing it, and apparently that didn't penetrate.
Like, Rufus, here's another way to think about it. Why would your strategy and convince more people of having a more scientific world and a less sort of crazy anthropomorphized world or theology? Why would your strategy do it? I mean, let's see if your strategy can do it. Let's make that into a scientific experiment where if you can convince more people than Jen of this worldview, maybe your strategy would be better. Like, see, I think that's where this is going.
Well, the position that I'm taking is what Jen has already acknowledged, and that's the position of natural law. And this position of natural law is already adopted by the skeptic, atheist, humanist community. They already have adopted it, and which, by the way, I'll remind you that this particular community is the fastest growing community in relation to theology, even though it's not a theology, but in relation to theology, the nuns, the nons, N-O-N-E, nuns, the none of the above nuns, or self-proclaimed atheists or agnostics, this community is literally in terms of religious groups, which is, I know it's not a religious group, but in terms of religious groups, it's the fastest growing. So religion is losing their ass at every turn. They're losing every argument and every debate, and people that are atheistic are growing faster than any religion.
But I'm winning all the debates I'm partaking in. And largely, people are not going to be atheists, even if it's proven directly to them that their religion is false, because it's just not a position most people are going to take, because all systems of human governance function as theocracies. And you've already accepted that the majority of people are theistic, so it would be kind of silly to think we could turn them into atheists.
So you're simply trying to redefine religion. If all you're going to do is call the universe and all that exists, if you're just going to simply assign the definition of God to the known universe, then you're simply just redefining religion.
I'm not redefining it. I'm taking it back to its original definition, and in so doing, destroying...
Which is paganism.
Well, again, that's a slander term that was invented by Christians, so I choose to
I understand.
By slander terms invented by people who despise me.
Well, I understand it's a slander term, but let's be honest. The pagans were literally all about natural law.
To varying degrees, maybe, but I mean, they had some degeneracy as well. I mean, it's very hard to get natural law right.
There were degeneracies, yes, there were, and that's because people are fucking corrupt. And so, how do we get over that? Because because right now we've already got science, and guess what? It's corrupt.
We have science that's being abused
by corrupt people. How do we get over that?
So the only way to fix false science is with better science. Same with religion.
There are behind the scenes motivations, deals and steals taking place in closed door sessions, and there's corruption, and there are psychopaths. There are people who don't give a fuck. There are people who will corrupt any and every system that they can. So how do we get over that? We
generate a theocracy that is impervious or maximally impervious to corruption.
Maximally, I'll go with maximally impervious. How? Literally walk me through it. I'm a logistics man.
There's things you can do, Rufus, and I'm sure you can add things to it, but I'll give you a couple of ideas. Number one, ban the promotion of ideology that can't be validated scientifically. Number two, create an honor society wherein if somebody violates the protocol, they're ostracized from the theocracy. So basically people will have, like, everybody has the...
we already have that. That happens in science already.
We don't have that at all. Science is not legitimate in the modern day. That should be very obvious.
No, but people in the scientific community are ostracized if they don't follow their various protocols.
Yeah, and they're representing false dogmas.
So it happens. We have that already. We have it. We have that already. People are ostracized because they don't follow protocol. We got that already.
But the protocols are suboptimal. That's the point. Like the protocols support banning Halton Art because he doesn't promote Big Bang crap. Because you have so many bad ideologies corrupting science and so many corrupting influences in government and corporations corrupting scientific research.
So
because, if we
so under Jen's system, under Jen's system, people like Halton Art would be hailed as heroes of science, and that's not what we see. How do we fix that?
We have a better scientific community because we'd create the kind of rules and structures that would allow for the scientific community.
Okay, so now you're talking about going against huge moneyed influences. How do we go against that?
Well, we could just change the nature of money so that money wouldn't be as corrupting an influence. So we'd get rid of things like central banks, which centralize concentration.
You don't know my friend Amy, but right now she's beating her hands into bloody pulp against her keyboard right now.
What's she saying? Let me look.
No, she's not in the chat, but I know her, and if she heard this conversation, she would be screaming at her computer and pounding her keyboard because she's all about what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, because we need, like, one option is, and see, this is worth studying, is like maybe we need separate currencies for certain kinds of activities.
Well, my friend Amy would say that her main purpose in life is to get rid of money altogether. Because she thinks if we get rid of money, that solves 99, if not 99% of all of our world's problems.
I don't know if I want to get rid of money altogether. This is a subject that, I need to think about a lot more carefully.
It's something her and I have debated for years.
I've thought about it. Basically, what you need to do is commandeer the central banks and immediately allow for the proliferation of alternate currencies based on special interest groups. So I'll give you an example. Well, let's say we say, okay, look at this hemp stuff. It's amazing. You can make houses out of it. It's really great. You can use it for all these purposes. We're going to develop a hemp coin. And the hemp coin is going to always be worth the same amount of hemp. And they will trade on the open market. And that will determine the cost of hemp. And people can trade directly in hemp, or they can use hemp coin. But what it does is basically guards against inflation because it's always relatively the same ease to grow a pound of hemp, for example. So the reason why money, like the thing you can't, I don't think it's realistic to get rid of money entirely because it's been used since antiquity in trading. What you can do is to make money less usurious by tying it more directly to the people who are generating the value in the first place, right? Because this idea of something from nothing, which is kind of the underlying problem of usury, which is basically creating confetti money, monopoly money from nothing, that's not really a problem. It's in so much as it's an application problem, right? Because it is possible to quote create something from not nothing, but you can go to a farm that has nothing there, colonize it, grow a bunch of hemp, and then you have value that you've created quote unquote from nothing, even though obviously the sun helped you do it, right? So it's not about creation of value from quote unquote nothing. It's about how much is the value of your currency representing the actual effort that went into creating that value in the first place. So I would just basically say anyone who wants to start up a coin or a money, they can, but we're not going to tolerate this usury lending, right?
Well, and see, money from nothing, like universe from nothing. I mean, all this violates causation.
Notice how there's a very common thread to all this fucking bullshit ideology, and it always comes back to violating causality. Notice how there's a very common thread in all these false dogmas. It's always someone who's trying to shoehorn some bullshit by violating causality. Same with this fucking Gödel theorem. And I'm glad that conversation happened, even though it was really fucking tedious. I know you liked it, Gandalf, but my God, if I never hear the fucking Gödel incompleteness theorem again, it'll be too soon. Do you know what this bullshit is, Rufus? Have you heard this theorem before?
I'm vaguely familiar with it.
Oh, fucking dumb. Oh my God. I don't need to forget it. Forget I said anything.
You just listen to Week in Review, Rufus, again.
Well, I find it I find it intriguing because I was hearing somebody else talk about this literally for the first time just a couple of days before we had that discussion, and it came up again. So it was bizarre for me that something that I had never heard of came up twice within a day or 2 days.
Well, like Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli would say, it was a quantum synchronicity.
Yeah, so I guess I have to go look into Godel now.
Yeah, I mean, Gödel is pretty easy. I mean, Jen and I mean, Duvid at the end just wanted to believe in Gödel based on his own personal authority. That was at the end of the debate. That was his last argument he come up with. It's like, well, Duvid, you're smart as hell, and I respect your ability to synthesize tons of knowledge, but accepting the Gödel theorem and its statement on the universe based solely on the authority of Duvid is really, well, that's not going to win it for me, as good as Duvid is.
I really loved listening to your reaction to that because I could almost feel you thinking about it, and you were evaluating the truth value of everything everyone was saying, and you were like, yeah, I get it. And I was like, yes, it was worth taking birth just for that one moment.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. I just want knowledge. That's like when I was a little kid, that's all I really cared about. Like, that's why I hate, I mean, people say, like, well, why you, when you kind of flamed out of academia, why are you not really wanting to take like a corporate job or do all this other stuff? Why are you taking like blue collar jobs or security jobs and teaching a little on the side and part-time work and all stuff? It's like, well, I'm not interested in that. My job was, I want to be a teacher. I want to make people love and learn knowledge. I mean, that's all I care about. I mean, there's really nothing else I give a shit about.
Well, you don't want to promote false ideology, right?
I can't. I mean, when I was promoting, when I was in an Ivy League school and they were doing all the sustainable development crap, I made a lot of enemies just by keep asking questions about what the fuck we're doing in Africa with these banks and the UN to like force these African countries to quote unquote develop markets that they don't have the human capital and or the governance to develop themselves, and that's violating their freedom to figure out how to develop that if they want to develop that.
Yeah, the free market is a false idol.
Yeah, it is. I don't like the free market. I mean, when I ask conservatives what the free market is, as with free speech and free will and all these other things, I mean, I like the idea of free, the people being having more liberty and more agency to do things they want. I mean, I'd like to teach people to be able to do that so they can maximize their potential in this life. But defining it as something that's real, I mean, what are the boundary and limit conditions of it? See, that's the issue. I mean, that's why I don't believe in these things.
We aren't free from the laws of physics. So we have to start, we can't start from an axiom of freedom. We have to start from an axiom of causality and say, here are the rules of physics. I can't jump off a fucking building and expect to fly. Given these rules, how can we arrange society so that people have the maximum freedom within those rules to realize their ultimate destiny, right? Like this pursuit of happiness, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, then what gives happiness? You're not actually telling us what makes us fucking happy, right? You're saying, okay, well, buy a car. That'll make you happy. Oh, wait, that didn't work. Now you're just more fucking miserable. This is a mercantilist theocracy. It's mercantilist values that drive the engine of the United States.
And you know, what should have, you know, policymakers should have paid attention to this. I mean, all the academics loved it, but then no one ever did anything with it. I mean, Daniel Kahneman is a very fine psychologist. He did a lot of work on hedonics, a lot of empirical work. And one of the things Daniel Kahneman showed was that, well, once you get the median income for a family in this country is in like the 50,000 range. This study came out in 2012. But once you get over like $75,000 a year, you don't get any happier compared to the median income.
There's no correlation to happiness past a certain income point. And that's something we really need to be aware of, because people right now are confused about that. They think that money does actually make you happy, which just seems...
After $75,000 a year, it does not, according to Kahneman. And he did a lot of empirical research on this. This is science. And you can do social science is more difficult because assessing causality is quite a bit different in the social sphere than it is in the natural sphere. But it's not impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Difficult does not mean impossible. And it is certainly possible to disentangle causality in social science. The problem is that most things are multi-causal. So that's where it's like,
Exactly.
People who want to say it's the Jews and that's it. That's a problem because that's vastly oversimplifying something that
Exactly.
until you actually in going within your own heart and say, okay, what have I done that was maybe suboptimal? You have to start from within and then look around and be honest with yourself about what's around you. But to like unilaterally attribute causality in social science is almost always a fallacy. Like I can say pretty accurately that the cause of the modern degeneracy is actually the Mahabharat War. Now, no, probably most people aren't going to agree with me because they don't even know what that is. But I think that's actually a position that makes quite a bit of predictions. Of course, the applicability of those predictions is limited because people don't really understand the history. I think most people are pretty historically illiterate past like 2,000 years ago, and this is because of this Christian religion largely.
And the calendar that was created from it. I mean,
Well, there's
like I tell
there's all
Claire all the
level. There's
time. I tell Claire all the time. Why the hell should I worship a personal god from a personal sky god, desert sky god from a tribe not my own, born of a woman not my own, who making claims in a book that I can't verify, and plus I can't even see where the fucking gravestone of this fucking dying and rising god is. It's all insane.
It's more than not being able to validate Gandalf. It's you can fucking flat out disprove these claims. Like with
That's
the big
true. But why would I even want to validate that? See, that's what I always would.
well, because your eternal soul might rest on it. That's why.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If my eternal soul is going to rest on believing all sorts of crazy nonsense for some crazy desert cult 2,000 years ago, that's fucking offensive to my
I'm just
sense of
answering your
honor and
question.
reason.
I'm just answering your question.
I know. That is the answer that's given. It's an insane answer.
Rufus, if that's the case, I'll see you in hell, buddy.
I know, right?
Let's go. Let's go to hell together.
I'll be the guy with the wine glass that doesn't have any wine in it. That'll be hell for me.
Fellow man says, Gandalf, you are offending me.
What, fellow man? Either explain or would you like to come in and explain? I'll give you the link, fellow man. If you want to come tell Gandalf why he's offending you, I'm curious. Or you can type it in the chat. Choice is yours.
Yeah, because I think everyone else seems to like what I'm saying.
Yeah, people like you, Gandalf. I think it's that male privilege.
Oh my God! Yeah. Okay. We need more cultural Marxist crap in this society. Cultural Marxism has got to be one of the dumbest ideas ever. It has totally destroyed academia. You know what's really interesting? Because in my normie book, and Invictus Bell fits within this. I know some. I get a lot of heat from this from the Woodnats. I have a fair amount of non-white friends. This is and all like my black friends, for instance, who are fairly intellectual for themselves and they're into business and improving their lives. They hate this cultural Marxism, white privilege shit because it's like, why do I need to go around talking about how much of a victim I am my whole life? Is that really my only way to have status? What about the work I do and the passions I love and the dreams that I have? I mean, like, all the men I know, no matter what race they are kind of shifting politically a little more to the right if they have something going on in their lives. I don't mean like they're becoming Nazis or anything like that. Don't take it that way. But I mean, subtly shifting a little to the right in their orientation about the world and rejecting some of this leftist nonsense because it's getting unintelligible.
I was a little bit distracted because I was shifting tabs and reading chat and typing. What did you say? Because a couple of people in the chat, Josh Plume Serpent, he also said he doesn't agree with you. What were you saying that has got everybody all bugged out right now? What did you say that? Somebody in the chat tell me why you disagree with Gandalf, or say or come in if you want to.
I don't agree with you, Gandalf, but I'll listen. I'm guessing it's something I said about Christianity. Or that a lot of people.
You said something that's rubbing. You said something that's rubbing a couple of people the wrong way. Gandalf and fellow man and Plumed. What did he say?
World peace. They quote unquote are really pushing the race dialectic lately. That's another thing.
All right, I'm going to open this up if you guys don't mind. Do you guys mind?
No, because I like the people you might open this up to.
Well, Artemis is here. Fellow man might want to come in and explain, and Plume Serpent might want to come in and explain why they disagree with you. And I'm curious. It would save a lot of typing. And if Jennifer doesn't mind, then I'll open it up.
I'd really rather not talk to Artemis, but it's for free. You can invite whoever you want.
Ask fellow man first. He was the first person that objected, from what I could tell in the chat, I think.
All right, well, everybody who's in the chat right now, please be respectful. I'm going to drop the link. And this link is for Fellow Man if you want, and it's for Plume Serpent if you want. And we'll leave it there for now, and we'll consider Artemis in a moment. But for now, it's for Plume Serpent and Fellow Man if you want. So please, nobody else click the link. That link is for you two, and let's keep it respectful and come in here and explain why you disagree. I'm curious, and it would save us a lot of reading and typing and that. God dang, I got a lot going on here. All right.
He was really noisy on the conversation yesterday, and I didn't really find he was contributing much. So maybe if he can get it together and actually make a point, like I'm fine to talk to him, but I just didn't get a good impression from
Okay.
Artemis.
Well, I'm fine with communicating with Artemis either now or later. I think his argument the other night was a little bit less than coherent, and he did admit that he needed more time to formulate an argument on that particular topic. But whatever. Artemis has expressed that he wanted to communicate with me on various topics because I guess he likes the way I communicate and debate, and he wanted to challenge me on a couple of things. Not particular, but whatever. Artemis, stay on the sideline for now. No disrespect, but Plume Serpent.
I think he said he might not be able to come on today anyway.
So Josh and Fellow Man, if you want to come on right now, there's the link. Come in here and please tell me why you disagree with what and what did Gandalf say specifically that you disagree with? Because I'm lost.
Plume Serpent, I'm following the chat for you. Plume Serpent was concerned that my view isn't enough about freedom for all. And I guess I would want to hear him explain that. I mean, because I'm not... and I even disagree with Jen a little bit on this. And so I'm probably the outlier here. I'm a little bit... And I don't know, maybe it's just my own personality quirk to some degree. I'm a little bit more on the authoritarian side. I frankly admit it.
All right. Well, Josh said he'd come on for a few minutes.
Yeah. And I'll probably... his questions will help me probably clarify my stance, and then I'll also understand his objection a little better. It would be kind of cool, because I like Josh a lot, too.
Josh, what's up, my brother?
Oh, yo, how's it going, guys?
Josh,
hey, what's going on, Josh?
Josh, you've never been on my channel. Welcome, brother.
Have I not?
Wait,
I thought
how the fuck has he never been on your channel?
I don't think Josh has actually ever been on my channel. To best of my knowledge, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't
feel
think
like I might have come on a like kind of an after show for Conwick at one time, maybe once. But you might be right. I might not have been here.
I could be wrong, but I don't recall.
But yeah, no. How's it going, everybody?
It's good, man. So you have a disagreement. Gandalf said something that you disagree with. What did he say?
I've just been listening to him the past couple of days, and just kind of getting his whole stance. I just don't agree, because to me it seems like it limits freedom, which is hindering things we can't change, such as the laws of gravity and physics and whatnot. But the freedom, the main point I always make is I believe that anybody has the right to do anything that they wish, as long as it does not infringe on my liberties. And I feel like it's pretty simple. It's kind of a non-aggression principle. I'm not really an ANCAP, but I do like the concept of the non-aggression principle. So kind of where you're coming from, just from what I've seen, seems, and I brought it up last night, it seems a little bit totalitarian. You limit particular types of propaganda, and I don't believe in giving any group or any one person that much power.
There wouldn't be a limitation on propaganda, Josh. It would just be that the only limitation would be that people wouldn't be able to assert things as true that hadn't been scientifically demonstrated to be true.
I can understand that now, but there's also other aspects of that of personal truths. I guess this is a good question. Let's say this is true for me. If I have proven this to myself, and I can give you the tools so that you can also prove it to yourself, it's self-verifiable. Would that contradict that kind of angle?
We just ask people to say that this is my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's fair.
What we want to do is reduce confusion by restricting the domain of truth to like actual hard science, like gravity. Gravity's true, etc. Whereas stuff like, well, I like this book. This is the best book ever written, and it's the truth. Well, hold on there. You think it's the best book ever written, but maybe that's not quite meeting the standard of objective truth.
For
And now-
instance, yeah, like don't tell me the Bible is better than Tolkien, bitch.
Well, now, just from looking out in through my studies into the occult and to just in reading things in personal and to where I'm at now, I can see truth in everything, even in lies. There is a no matter where you look, even if it's like Satanism, if you want to look there is some truth in everything you look at, because this is my opinion and my perspective based on what I've experienced is that to use the colloquial term, God is in everything. And it was mentioned the universe, and I would say God is the omniverse. It is all of everything that could be forever happening at once. And I also agree with Jen that God is impersonal, though. So I'm kind of, I think it's a little bit tomato and just a difference of definition.
Well, Josh, you are right. There is truth in everything. And the problem isn't that there's truth in everything. The problem is that people are mistaking partial truths for the complete truth, which is the same problem that's inherent to idolatry, is that perceiving God or understanding God as something other than the true God, i.e. the universe, will have imposed limitations on your ability to understand things. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to prevent people the freedom to learn as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with that. I agree with that. But I mean, I guess this is my you guys kind of both like want to push, I guess, the world or as many people as you can in that direction. But from my understanding, um, I'll just put it like this: I don't see it as possible. I think the world is going to go the way it goes, and that we cannot change anything. That it's, the things that happen that are great. People, the people we talk to, and
I
maybe
don't think you believe that, Josh.
I do.
I got to push back on you right there. You
I
said I don't think we can change anything. Then why are you out here? Why are you putting your voice out here?
Honestly,
Good point.
because
That's a good question.
and that is a really good question. Yeah, and I have an answer for that. It's because I personally want to learn as much as I can. Like I said, truth is in everything, and sometimes from these conversations, I go back later and I reflect on them, and it broadens my understanding deeper. Like it
Okay,
takes
but
me
you
to a different
realize that before you were a voice, you were an ear.
place.
Like the rest of us, we spent a lot of time listening to other people have conversations like this before we bothered to get a channel and engage. Okay,
Sure.
so now you're out here as a voice, and you know the power of your voice, and you know that your voice affects other people, and every word that you say literally changes the brain synapses of the people that are listening. I know you know this.
Yeah, but my point would be that I didn't make the choice to do that, and those people didn't make the choice to be able to accept that knowledge that is imparted upon them. It just is.
No, well, the point I was trying to make was in conflict with what you said. That you said I don't think that we can change anything. I disagree wholeheartedly. And although my personal change, whatever effect I might have, might be small, minuscule, maybe undetectable, um, it's not insignificant and non-existent because I understand the butterfly effect. I myself have experienced where somebody has said something in a conversation, personal or online, and one word or one phrase or one sentence that they said resonated with me, and then later I reflected on it and it changed my whole worldview. And I've actually had people tell me later on, other people in other conversations tell me, that thing you said, I really thought about that, and blah, 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 blah.
And it
And
affected me,
and,
yeah.
and it totally changed their whole
Mhm.
worldview. And if you understand neurology, not only did it change their worldview, it absolutely changed their brain synopsis. It literally changed the structure,
And
the physical structure of their brain.
and I get you totally, but what I'm saying is that I think it comes to a level of understanding that I didn't do any of that.
Yeah, you did. Well, I mean,
I,
that's where determinism comes into
I
play.
would be a conduit in that point
Okay.
for whatever. Yeah, a
Yeah.
conduit for that information, for that knowledge to pass through me. And that's kind of also what I disagree with. I don't believe that knowledge comes from a religion. I believe knowledge comes from the absolute, and we are somewhat of conduits of it, just like Bach. He said
But
with his writing that he didn't write his music,
Mm.
that it was from higher than himself.
Okay.
But
So you
but the
go ahead, Ken.
imaginary behind that, the community within which that incubates, is essentially a religious construct, because religion technically means what binds people together.
Sure, yeah, but the knowledge was already pre-existing.
Yeah,
It
but
was already there.
it's the accessing of it, and it's the synthesizing of it, and it's the transmission of it, which
Now,
is where the religion comes in. Because if knowledge can't be done that way, it can't affect and cause the growth of human civilization.
Now, I agree with you on that sense, but I believe that the true seekers of knowledge, the few, the ones that will gain enlightenment, are few and far between, and they never got there through religion. They might have been religious at one point in their life, but in the end, they weren't religious. That they just had a connection with the absolute. They were able to see it for themselves, and they were able to internalize it in a way which allowed them to get into these higher states of consciousness, which is personally what I'm seeking, is these higher states of understanding and awareness.
That's what we call religion. We call the other people to be false religious teachers or religious practitioners. I call what you're describing true religion.
Okay, I guess, and again, that comes down to an expression of definitions. I wouldn't necessarily use that definition. I mean, generally, I would use that as the occult. That is studying the occult, but you can use that as religion as well. You could say occult is a religion in and of itself. Whereas, again, for me, just to bash on it, I would say that the occult is simply hidden knowledge, and you don't need anybody else or a social construct to find that hidden knowledge. It just takes a man that is willing to give all and everything to find it himself. And through all the studies that I've done, it does help to have teachers, and it does help to have groups, but a man can do it by himself.
It's possible, but it's harder.
It is harder. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it takes an exceptional man. I mean, one thing you have to realize, and there was that when NPC meme got big in mid 2018. I mean, people were studying all sorts of stuff from Psychology Today. There was a big study done in 2010, 2011 that had hundreds of participants, and it tried to examine, well, how much internal dialogue goes on inside the minds of people. Well, 8 out of 10 people had no internal dialogue.
I saw that study. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have no internal dialogue, getting wisdom and knowledge is extremely difficult, if not impossible. So 80% of people probably can't get enlightened.
Now, I agree.
Better lives, but they can't get enlightened. So enlightened what requires a certain level of intelligence and a certain orientation to the universe, a truth-seeking openness, willingness to put down your ego and its previous beliefs, to be open to what the universe can teach.
Now, I agree and disagree with you there, and
so where do you agree and where do you disagree?
Okay, where I agree is that yes, the 80%, and I'd say more like 99.5%.
Whoever's eating, please mute your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd say 99+% cannot become enlightened, just as a law of nature. It's not for everybody, and it's not that anybody's lesser. It's just that some people don't even really care. And a lot of people that try will never make it, and none of us are guaranteed. But also in that, I disagree in the sense that they don't have an internal dialogue. I would say that all they have is internal dialogue and nothing else, that they have no consciousness, because internal dialogue is just your programming running itself. To have consciousness, you would have to shut off the internal dialogue and make a step to do that, to seek towards a man that would have will. I think will is attainable, but in our current state of where we're at, we cannot attain will because we are blocked by our internal dialogue and our programming.
Yeah, they lack self-reflection.
Yeah, remembering the self is a term that I like. You have to remember the self, see yourself, and remember yourself, and then remember yourself remembering yourself, which is, it becomes paradoxical, it becomes very abstract, but it does make logical sense. And a point that I actually, before I forget, I wanted to make it yesterday and I didn't. One of the things that I've studied that one, in order to grow, a man must grow his being, his action, and his intellect at the same time, his understanding. They must grow simultaneously. And for a long time, my understanding far outweighed my action, my being. And in bringing my being back up and acting and kind of leveling them out, you actually gain more. You're either, I've heard the way it described as the stupid saint or the weak yogi. So you're either a stupid saint or a weak yogi if you don't level that up. You have to make it an equal presence of your will and your will. Well, I say will. I'm going to back that up. I'm getting flustered with my words. I think I said what I needed to say. If I didn't make sense, I'm sorry.
Well, it did kind of make sense
You
to
were
me,
starting to.
Josh. Like, I think there is truth to what you're saying. Like, you have to make the decision yourself to go for that higher knowledge. It's not possible to force someone to become enlightened. So there's two aspects of it. There's your own inner will, which is the thing that decides that you want the higher knowledge. And then there's the greater society that makes that knowledge available. It's not our job to force the knowledge on people. It's our job to make it available so that when people make the decision internally to pursue it, they're getting something that's not going to deceive them and ultimately stifle their growth.
And I have a question for both of you, Jen and Gandalf. Have you guys read the Kabbalion? I mean, it's kind of a general book, but just wondering if you guys have read it.
No, but I'll be interested in reading it at some point. I mean, I'm a pretty big reader.
Okay, yeah, it's a good one. It's short read. It's studying of the Hermetic kind of principles, basically.
I haven't, but you talk about it a lot. I don't tend to read too much, but was there something in particular that
it's a really good, it's a good place to build a dialogue. It's a starting point, and I recommend, based on some, I would call him a teacher of mine that recommended to me, and I see why he recommended it to me. It's basically designed as a skeleton key for all future knowledge. And you can weigh it against the Kabbalion. That's why I recommend.
What's the big takeaway? What is it about the Kabbalion that influenced you the most?
It's just that it gives you an objective way of looking at knowledge. It gives you a start point, and that's why I like to represent it to people, especially when first talking about higher knowledge, because some of the stuff that I've studied, if I were to try to talk about it, it would sound either so abstract or so crazy that it wouldn't make sense. But from using the Kabbalion as a starting point, and there's other books, you don't have to read the Kabbalion, and I don't think any of you necessarily have to. I was just curious if you had read it, because it is such a good intro into it. But the deeper you dig into a cult and you really look at, and I don't really like the term metaphysical, or quantum or whatever, this next level higher state of consciousness that is attainable. It gets abstract and it gets to a point where you cannot actually explain certain things except outside of analogy or feeling, and you would have to show somebody else how to do it rather than explain it to them. And I think that's where our knowledge or our language is so limiting, because it only goes so far. I've looked at a lot of I started with shamanism. That was the thing that kind of got me into higher knowledge, and now I don't even know what you would call what I've studied at this point, where I stand. It's just seeking knowledge and not even enlightenment. I think that isn't the right word for what I'm seeking anymore. It's more abstract.
You mentioned the Kabbalion is hermeneutic.
Hermetic, yeah.
Okay. Can I assume that you understand that the word hermetic comes from the Greek god Hermes?
Hermes, yeah. Hermes Trismegistus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's already a lot to unpack when you invoke Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus is thrice majestic.
Sure, but now before you
So
go any further,
we've got a Trinity invoked, we've got Majesty invoked.
Yeah, but let me make a point. Now you cannot have bias when seeking knowledge. You have to be able to set aside these things. And yeah, sure, even I'll give you this. Even it's written by the 3 initiates. That again, there's your Trinity. So yeah, sure, it has that symbolism, but the knowledge that is within, which isn't really that deep, it's pretty cookie cutter when you start digging into it, but it's a
Okay.
good one.
Well, I'm just wondering, are you aware that Hermes is associated with the planet Mercury?
Yes, as far as you know, an analogous mythology. Some people
Okay.
believe he lived as a person too, though.
Are
There's
you
some of that.
also aware that have you ever heard of a hermetical seal?
Yeah, sealed hermetically,
All right, you
absolutely.
know what that means?
Yeah, airtight, nothing gets out.
Okay, do you understand where the word hermetical seal comes from? Hermetical.
Yeah, it means it's sealed hermetically. It means that
It's
nothing gets
Hermes.
out. Yeah, but it also ties
Why?
into
Why is it associated hermetical? Why do we use that word?
the same way that I would say that the lips of knowledge are closed to those without the ears of understanding. That is
Because
hermetically sealed.
Hermes was a god, and gods are often associated with as being omnipresent, and air is omnipresent. This is
Hmm.
air. Literally, the ancient people didn't know that air was particulate matter, but they knew that you would die if you didn't have any. If you didn't, that's just where we get the idea of the breath of life and all that stuff.
Sure.
So they didn't. They understood that air was a thing, and they understood that air was everywhere. This is how gods become omnipresent. And most gods, including Hermes, was associated with being having these attributes that many gods have: omnipresent, omnibenevolent, omnipowerful, omnipotent, omniscient. Right? They can know everything. They see everything. The whole idea of the pantheon of gods in the Greek tradition, you know, they sat on Mount Olympus and they looked down from above and they watched all the affairs of men, so they knew everything. That meant they were all omniscient. They all knew everything. And
Sure.
since they were all had the ability to be anywhere, anytime, it's the same as being air, having the qualities of air.
Yeah,
So,
but I think it also connects. Yeah, I agree with you, but I think it also has to do with hidden knowledge. Hermetically sealed means it's sealed under. It's hidden. It's hidden without you. It takes a key to open up a hermetically sealed environment. It takes the right amount of, again, it ties back to the same quote that I just mentioned. It's the lips of knowledge are closed to those without the ears of understanding. That is hermetically sealed esoterically. And I agree with you. It translates, because here's another thing that I've learned through my studies is that to know man, you must know the universe. To know man, you must understand atoms and their structure and the quantum level. It is all interconnected. It is all relatable, and it's all scalable outward as it is inward, as above, so below. It's the same thing. It's that,
And,
people like,
and to know the universe, you must know man.
yeah, exactly. And to know the universe, you must, exactly. Yes, I agree. It's all connected. And that is the
as
absolute,
above, so below.
as above, so below.
And
And
the
that,
quantum states are also entangled. Quantum entanglement is an important branch of quantum mechanics.
yeah, and I've dug in a good bit in my early esoteric studies. I dug into the quantum physics side of things and was blown away at, wow, there's science actually talking about occult studies and esoteric kind of text. It was, I liked it.
I prefer as within, so without, because
Same
as above,
thing though.
so below implies there's a top and a bottom, and that's a kind of absolutist thinking that we don't really subscribe to. We look at things more cyclically and less in terms of like absolutes.
I mean, and that's a fair way, but you would know what I meant either way, and that's
Oh yeah,
and just like the same thing with you, I would know what you meant if you said as within, so without. It's all relative, but I think we agree that to know yourself, you must know the universe, and vice versa.
well, I could tell as soon as I met you that you were a genuine person, and that's one of the benefits of having advanced knowledge is the ability to be an extremely good judge of people.
Indeed, I'm wrong sometimes, though. I admit that. I think we all are. And if you would have met me 2 or 3 years ago, you would have been like, "That guy is a total fucking jerk off."
Or 6 months ago.
A little more than 6 months ago, a year ago, about a year ago, I was going through stuff. Yeah, but you know what? Within this past year, I did reconnect with a special teacher of mine that actually uh, didn't give me any knowledge, but pointed the direction for me and left road signs for me to find it for myself. And forever indebted to him.
Jennifer
So
and Gandalf don't know that you and I went through a little feud.
yeah, we had a tiff, and you know we squashed it, and I don't actually think you heard. I think you were having audio problems yesterday, but I did. I said thank you to you just publicly for actually manning up, being super stand up and being like, hey, you know, like, uh, sorry to cross stream. I didn't mean to. And, you know, I think that's what it takes. And it wasn't even that big of a deal to me. I wasn't really upset or anything. But I really thought that was big of you to step up and be like, hey, everybody go check this out. I think that's what we need. And if we're going to continue moving forward, and avoid the poopy drama, you know?
Well, and
That-
I want to give Rufus credit because he did call me earlier today in private, and we worked out some of our misunderstandings from yesterday when we were fighting with Domingo. So I give Rufus a lot of credit for wanting to reach out and make sure we keep open lines of communication if there was a misunderstanding like that. That in my mind raises my opinion of him quite a bit. And Plumed, you're similar kind of guy, I think, too. And I just appreciate just that kind of behavior. Like that just makes me feel so much more comfortable. It makes me
Oh,
want
yeah.
to trust you more.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. I mean, you know, we might not all agree with things. I mean, Lord knows Rufus and I do not agree on everything, and I think there's a lot of half of the things we probably believe we disagree on. But I really like having him on the show because he's a totally opposing voice to mine, and it keeps me on my toes, and it makes me have my arguments more thought out, and he calls me when I'm wrong, rather than being in a damn echo chamber. So I appreciate it.
Well, I think interesting, nuanced disagreements. You know, we're like people aren't necessarily playing devil's advocate or trolling just to do those things. But if you have nuanced disagreements where you're really trying to nail down points, and you're doing it with a spirit of charity and openness, so that at the end there's some more knowledge is gained, or at least some more differences are exposed that are useful. But like people do it so amicably, all that
Yeah.
really adds to public discourse rather than subtracts. I mean, I don't. I say I'm really authoritarian. I think it's more like I want to suppress fraud and corruption and bullshit.
Sure.
But I think I want people to be different. I don't want people to be the same. Like this is another reason I don't like equality, for instance. I mean,
Yeah, diversity.
yeah, the world really is diverse. People,
Mhm.
especially at this end of the spectrum. I mean, the four of us are all very different people. I mean, we
Yes.
all had completely different life experiences, completely different backgrounds, completely different families, completely different occupations. And what makes it cool is that we can sit down and talk like this and have really high level discussions about complex shit. Because
Indeed.
we lack.
Well, these are the best discussions because, you know, honestly, when we agree on everything, it gets really boring real fast.
Well, now I'm about to throw a cog in the wheel right here. I'm about to throw it all off because this is one of the other things I do disagree with. But I'm not inflammatory about it. It's just a stance that for me, I see truth in it. I do think that Jesus Christ was a real man, and I think that he was the truth. I think that the reason that we talk about him still today is because there was truth about him. I think it's all been misunderstood, and I'm not a traditional. I don't follow the New Testament, the Nag Hammadi
The Nag Hammadi.
the Nag Hammadi, yes, is, and I can't even say it right, but I've read it, and when I actually had, you know, I was raised Christian, I left it behind, and after reading the Nag Hammadi, I was like, wow, this is much more along the ideas of what I would have seen Christ be, and it was written within 200 years of his death, and it tells a much different story, and it also teaches about enlightenment and basically that Christ consciousness, God is within the self, the same things we're talking about here. And I believe that that was Jesus's real message, and he was divine in that, and that's why we still talk about it. So now that is a belief and an opinion. I cannot promote that as truth, but that's, you know, that's where I differ than you guys here.
Well,
Well, we're
Josh, hang on, Jen. Josh,
I don't
hang on a second. Just 1 second, Jen. Josh, are you subscribed to a channel by the name of Bill Donahue?
No.
Okay, go subscribe to Bill Donahue.
Okay. Now I have a question though. Is he an occult studier, or is he
Oh yeah.
okay?
Oh yeah.
But I'm picky with my cult just
Oh,
for
well, I'll tell you what. Go give Bill Donahue a listen, and you can decide for yourself if
okay.
you want to keep listening.
Fair enough.
He's
I
you'll
just
usually
subscribed to
he's
him.
an older guy with glasses. You'll
Yeah,
usually see him with
I
a
found
white
him.
shirt, and he looks like his presentations are like he's preaching to a small church
Okay.
congregation.
Yeah, I'll go listen
But
to
he
him.
talks about Buddha, he talks about Vishnu and all the other religions. He talks
Yeah.
about how they relate to Christ and the real meaning behind the supposed gospels. And you might find great interest and great information. Or
Yeah, sure. It seems like I will. I'm just kind of digging through what he's got. Yeah, I'll definitely give him a listen. I might not be on his side of the fence totally, but I'm sure I'll be able to find some truth in there. So thank you.
he's definitely at least worth listening to if you're interested in these
Yeah.
subjects.
Well, there is a Bill Donahue who's a shill for the Catholic League too, so it's not that guy.
Yeah, no, I see. Did Jesus Christ really exist? Where did all the Bible stories come from? Was Adam the first man really Adam? And yeah, so but Jen, you had something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, if that's how you feel, I basically celebrate that. It's totally fine. Like, I don't see it as my role to form your religious opinions. I
Mhm.
just see it as my role to facilitate more or less people's understanding of science and sociology. And it's because theology plays into sociology so much that I have to invoke these religious
Mhm.
ideas. And I do hate that, so many people get offended by what I say, but I hope it's clear that I don't want to force people to convert their religion. I
Oh, I
just want.
understand that. No, and that's why I wanted to just be clear, and I always make it clear, just because I do have some beliefs. I can't lie and say I don't. A lot of what I do is based on experience, but these are my beliefs based on good objective points. I feel like for myself, I've proven enough, um, and it makes sense. And you can't offend me in it. That's the thing, because I understand it's a belief, and that's what fellow man was being offended about with Gandalf, is that it was he saw, as fellow man would say, he was kind of bashing Christianity. I didn't see it that way, but I'm also, fellow man doesn't agree with my stance. He says my belief in the kind of Gnostic text is heresy, and but we still get along. We're still friends. We've been friends. So
Yeah,
I
I'm a little more hostile to Christianity. I mean, I make no bones about it.
yeah, and fellow man is a fundamentalist Christian, so he's gonna pick bones about it. But I don't. I'm not a fundamentalist, and I don't really care what anybody believes. But
Well,
I'm not afraid to say
I'm
where I
I'm a
stand either.
flat
I
out
don't hide from it.
anti-theist,
So
and
I think we can
if
all
fellow
agree
man
that
and I
there's
can be
problems
friends.
in Christianity, but I think we can probably also agree that the best people to reform Christianity is Christians themselves.
indeed, yeah,
So
I'd
actually, what
absolutely
we
say
need to do
that.
is appeal to the
Because really,
moderates.
if you want to say what a Christian is, it's somebody that follows Christ's teachings. Now, how many Christians literally follow Christ's teachings? None of them. So there's your,
Well, I mean, the Christian I saw, my Pentecostal friend from New York. I mean, he saved my life when I was homeless. So
Well, that's a Christ-like thing, but he doesn't always act like Christ, because man can't. It's impossible. We can't always be like Christ. We don't have will or intent to be able to do that. I gotta grab a drink. I'll be right back.
yeah,
So I would think that what we ought to do, or what we should maybe focus a little more on, is appealing to religious moderates, because they're the ones who typically open the door for extremists, fundamentalists, literalists. They're the moderates are the silent majority who make it taboo to criticize religion, and I don't think religion should be beyond reproach. I don't think anything should be beyond criticism.
so we need someone. So we need moderates to go into John Hagee's church and get people to stop, wanting a Middle Eastern war with Israel involved to bring Jesus back.
That's so fucking toxic, man. The whole idea of apocalyptic fetishism is so toxic. And it's the same fallacy as like a beginning and an end, right?
And
That's
that's born of religion, so that's where I have a real problem.
Well, our belief doesn't look at it that way. We see everything in terms of cycles, so nothing has a beginning or an end. Everything is cyclic.
Well, you can't have a cycle without a beginning and the end.
Well, imagine a circle. Does it have a
The
beginning?
Ouroboros snake eating its tail.
Yeah, that doesn't have a beginning either. Like it's arbitrary.
It is
right?
arbitrary, but there is a beginning. There isn't an end.
There are relative stops and starts, but there's no, like, imagine a circle, Ruth. Where's the beginning of a circle?
No, I understand. The starting point is arbitrary, but there is still a starting point.
Who says?
I don't think so. The circle is the starting point. It
It's
doesn't.
infinite.
Yeah, you can't say this is the start of a circle.
Josh, you're not infinite. I'm not infinite.
No, but the
You could say
omniverse is infinite.
you could say the particles in my body are infinite, and every molecule has been absorbed, and it's always been here in the universe, and I just happen to grab that particular particle to use in my body at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Of course, you could say all those things, but me as the entity, I'm standing right fucking here. You can see me, you can touch me, you can engage me. There's no denying. I'm empirically here right now, so I had a beginning, and you could say, well, what defines a beginning? So now we're back to arbitrary, points on the circle. You have
Where's the start of your personality? Does it have a start point, or is it one continuous thing?
Well, that's a really good question. With the start of my personality, I don't know if I have an answer
I'd
for
have
that.
an answer. I have an answer. I would say the start of your personality came from the time you were able to manifest one based on your indoctrination of your environment.
But what was indoctrinated?
And I would use the word I use is tonal of the times. It's the experience of the time we're living in. The being that was born and sponge. You were a sponge when you're born, and by being a sponge, the tonal of the times basically implants within you a personality. Some of that came from your parents and your grandparents and your lineage, but most of it came from the indoctrination of your environment.
Yeah.
This is the blank slate argument.
I don't take any particular blank slate. I just say it's not a blank slate because you were conceived by your parents, and therefore you had a particular set number of values of what you could have been, and then based on your environment, it further whittles it down until you become what you are, and it crystallizes that.
Just thinking on that.
It's an interesting concept. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now. Is again, it comes down to that impersonal God and the impersonal life. That's another really good book too, The Impersonal Life.
I see you doing something, Rufus. You're moving around.
Yeah, I'm a little distracted. My promo for Friday is ready, and I was wondering where the download absorbed.
What's that photo? Oh, you have Stellarium. I see. I need to get that program again because I know Infant Freedom and you're talking about stars with it.
Yeah, this is the best free program like ever. It's an absolutely fucking huge app. It's enormous. It's totally free. It is the most functional, the most useful tool. It's the most fascinating, fun to play with, the deepest computer program, and it's totally free. It's fucking amazing.
And that's connected to Google Earth too, isn't it?
Yes, because you can input location and you can enter where you want to view the stars.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what Influence will do is she'll enter.
Do it from Israel.
She'll do it from Israel. So she'll get her view of the stars from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's a little key element that she does, which is key to anybody who wants to understand this cosmology or astrotheology aspect of what her and I talk about.
To add in, this is a really strange thing that we've kind of found this little niche that we're in, is that we're kind of bringing forth occult knowledge to a public light. Like, we're on fucking YouTube. I mean, everybody gets to see this, but look how limited amount of people actually care, or some of them don't care, some of them can't understand, and those that do, I mean, we kind of whittle our way into actually being in these conversations. And I think it's a glorious time to live in, to be able to do this like we're doing it, rather than
Sure,
having to join a Mason lodge, you know.
and everybody has. Oh, by the way, and Masons for the large part have no clue. But yeah, we're doing what we can, and there are all levels of understanding, and people stumble onto this information and they go, what's that about? And maybe they heard it for the first time, or maybe they heard it for the seventh time, and they might go, you know what? I'm gonna go look. Hey, he just said Stellarium is free, and they go on Google and bam, there it is, and then they start
Yep.
exploring. And people take their own stages and steps and their own progress to come to these, and they hear people like us talking about this stuff, and they go, wow, what is he talking about? I want to, and they have to go do a little bit of homework, and they
And
find
see,
their own path.
you're bringing a good point, but I'd like to, talking about the change aspect and why I don't believe we can change anything. My good friend, he the guy that taught me a lot of that led me in the direction. One of the stories he told me, he's a very, very intelligent guy and a very well spoken, well written. But he's out there with his buddy, and they're kind of having a camping trip, and they gather their dinner from out and about, and they have, just enough to make that dinner for the night. And he has a vision, and he's not a hokey pokey kind of guy. He doesn't believe in all that stuff, but he had a vision of the pot that he was cooking falling into the fire. And he was like, extra careful. And he told his friend, he's like, I don't believe this stuff, but we both need to be extra careful because this is our only dinner and we're not going to eat tonight if this falls in the fire. So, through everything they do, they're extra careful, every little step they take. And you can already see where it's going. The pot falls into the fire anyway. He saw what was going to happen, yet he couldn't change it. And that's a analogous story, but I feel like it relates. And that's something, the more you dig in, the more you see, no matter what happens, you might be an artifact in that path of somebody else's life, but you didn't actually change it. It was already predetermined, is kind of how I see it. It was already going to go that way.
Yeah, fate is real, but we don't know what is fated to happen, and
You're right.
We can't force people to change, but we can influence them.
Yeah, we can be conduits of it. I like that term, conduit of change, but it's kind of oxymoronic a little bit.
Well, I think we are kind of coming into a period of rapid change. Like, we have all this information. We have more access to information than we've ever had in history. That's a fact.
Yes. And go ahead, sorry.
We're starting to sort the information.
Mm-hmm.
And once people get a consensus on sorting that information, you're going to see some amazing things happen.
I agree. And another thing I was taught, that in times we're also approaching a big change of the earth. Things are happening rapidly, and it's times of turmoil. And in times of turmoil, more growth happens, and it's more accessible to and readily available. So we're at that time, and I feel like this conversation, I get something out of it. It's something for me. Just having this conversation helps me understand my own concepts even better, and other people's concepts even better. So we're blessed to be here. At the same time, we're also damned to be here.
Heaven and hell are a state of mind.
Indeed. No, I'm glad that I've met all you guys. I enjoyed the conversations. That's something that I've sought for a long time. I tried to do it years ago.
So we've been going a couple of hours, you guys. How about we wrap this up? Unless anybody has anything particular they want to cover.
Thanks for hosting. Nice to talk to you, Josh and Gandalf. We'll hopefully see you guys real soon, and take care.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. I'll be kicking it in the side chat for Conwick, and I'll wait for you to finish before I start up my gig. So
Yeah, okay, yeah. Just think about if we start at 7, which we normally do, we're going to be going up roughly 2 hours ish,
Hmm.
and we might do a little overtime, but we're trying to cut it down to 2 hours. So that'll be that, and
Yeah.
cool. And if you want to come hang out with us and have something to add to the conversation, you're more than welcome to, Josh.
And I do, while I'm glad I reminded of this, because just a warning, YouTube's new policy is to shut down people that deny things and call things hoaxes. Just letting you know. So maybe be a little more creative with how you say it, because they have enforced a new policy to shut that down.
Actually, I'm aware of that, and to be honest with you, I almost thought about titling Friday's show, "Is It Okay to Call It a Hoax Now?" Because Lancaster is so fucking hoax. And they've even, I mean, news articles in mainstream have already called it a hoax. The thing is, they're throwing this kid under the bus,
Hmm.
and I'm going to try to expose, or at least show people, that it takes more than this kid to pull off something like this. That it couldn't have gone as far as it did if they weren't all in it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see, and I don't keep up with the news at all anymore. I've totally retracted. So I actually do not at all know what happened at Lancaster. So
Well, it was a 21-year-old police officer who was, the news story was that he was shot by a sniper. And then they claimed that the sniper shot came from the building adjacent to the police station, and that building happens to be the housing unit for a bunch of mental patients, people with mental, issues and
mhm,
problems. So they were making a big deal about that because
yeah.
there's that angle about the gun
Yeah, gun
confiscation
control. Yeah.
and mental problems, and they're trying to associate those two things.
Hmm.
So there was that angle, but yeah, there's a lot of nuances that I'm going to hash out on Friday that I think are going to conclusively show that it couldn't possibly have been this 21-year-old,
Yeah.
freshman police officer who pulled off this entire thing, creating the entire event the way it unfolded. He couldn't have possibly done it by himself. It had logistically, it had to be, most of these people were in on it, including hospital officials. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
mean, I'm down to listen to the info, and then I haven't talked to Gandalf, but the other Gandalf, Gandalf one, as I call him now, vibes of truth. But he plans on doing. I promised him a Bigfoot episode, so that's still the plan, unless otherwise. And I have a couple of other topics in mind if he's not there. So
prepare yourself for a little bit of flack when you do that.
hey, you know what? I get flack for doing anything anyway. So
Hey, welcome to the internet, right?
yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm gonna get flack. I got like, I had 40 something downvotes on the video we were doing yesterday, and I'm like, what happened? And then I guess they were all sock accounts, and it ended up being 8 because I guess those negative votes didn't count. But
Dude, we talked about doing a Bigfoot show for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he was reluctant. He was like, "Man, I don't know if I should talk about it." I was like, "Fuck it, man. Let's just talk about it." And I did that show, and boy, the trolls came out of the woodwork.
yeah, well, it's not just gonna be Bigfoot. I'd like to bridge it into paranormal talk as well. And kind of because I feel like it goes hand in hand. So it'll be interesting. And Gandalf, he deserves it. He did a lot for me back in the day. He had my back. He helped me run my show 2 years ago, and I feel obliged to do that for him because I know he really enjoys the topic, and he's been a friend of mine, and I definitely try to show my friends that respect and show the love back. So
Well, I genuinely don't care. I love Gandalf. He's my brother, and I genuinely don't care if people have crazy ideas, as long as they don't legislate those ideas where I have to pay tax dollars and affect my life directly.
hey, I'd pay tax dollars to hunt Bigfoot. It's better than what we pay tax dollars for now. So,
Well, true. I mean, yeah, 700 military bases around the world. I think we
yeah.
could afford a little bit of Bigfoot research.
Just give me that Bigfoot money. I'll go research.
All right, Jennifer, Gandalf, and Josh, glad you could join us. Good conversation, you guys. And
Absolutely.
for anybody who's still engaged and listening, the Conwick will be fired up this Friday. and we're going to cover a couple of interesting topics. 7 p.m. Eastern here on this channel. Conwick Show will be returning at least for this Friday, and I can't guarantee it'll be every Friday after that, but we are doing a Conwick Show Friday. So if you're interested, we'll see you guys Friday at 7 o'clock.
And then 9 o'clock ish for 13th hour.
And then, yeah, right after that, Plume Serpent channel, we'll be over on Plume Serpent's channel. We'll either be engaged or we'll be in the chat. So as soon as we get done, that's where we're all going to be, is on Josh's channel.
Cool.
So thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. It's been fun. It was good conversation, and we will progress. We'll have this conversation again. We'll dig deeper as we move forward with our understandings. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Final
thank
thoughts?
you. I'm good.
All right, well, be good to each other and pick up your trash, and I'll see you guys Friday.